I'm a weary exile, singing my song of loneliness. The grass is the springiest, the bees are the stingiest, the birds are the wingiest, the bells are the ringiest, the heart's the singiest, the arms the clingiest, way back home. What about the sun? The sun's the blaziest, and the fields the daisiest, and the cows the craziest, and the help's the laziest, the boy.
From the news center outside the city of Chicago in the great Midwest, it's the Stranger Than Fiction News right here on the Fringe FM. I'm Vance Nesbitt. Here's our headlines. The Charles Manson murder house has been sold. The murder house was for sale only for a short time before it was snatched up by a willing and able buyer, Zach Bagans, who is host of Ghost Adventures. Bagans is also known for his interest in things paranormal and the occult, so it seems a fitting addition to his already huge collection of oddities, except this one likely will not fit in his haunted museum. The house actually did not belong to Manson. Instead, it was home of Leno and Rosemary LaBianca, who were murdered by members of Manson's family at his request. The murders were partially connected to the murder of Sharon Tate, only in that she and her unborn child were killed the day before by a similar request by Manson. Bagans was drawn to the home because nearly all of it is still original. He told Newsweek he was drawn to the history and spectacular views and energy that he felt while he was there. It is unclear if the house is haunted or filled with energy from the brutal murders, but Bagans is ready to find out. He did share a story of dogs disappearing from the property and said that past tenants had been spooked silly by seemingly paranormal encounters. Bagans does not yet seem to have a plan set on what to do with the house. Source, Newsweek.com. And a hunting guide and his client shot each other and then blamed it on undocumented migrants. Police officers attended the scene at a remote South Texas ranch near to the Mexico border back in early January, finding the two men bleeding from gunshot wounds. A second guide was involved in the incident but escaped without injury. Walker Doherty, age 26, and client Edwin Roberts, age 59, and another guide, Michael Bryant, told police they suspected the shooters were undocumented immigrants that they had seen on the ranch earlier in their trip. Police and a grand jury have now concluded the men were lying about the incident and actually shot each other. Investigators believe that Doherty became paranoid that illegal immigrants were inside a vehicle with Mr. Roberts and his wife and attempted to get inside without saying anything. This prompted Roberts to shoot at the door. Doherty then ran back to his cabin to grab his gun and to get backup from Mr. Bryant, and together they opened fire on the truck. Doherty and Roberts were both struck by bullets to the chest and to the arm respectively. It is believed that Mr. Doherty shot Mr. Roberts, his client, and Mr. Bryant shot Mr. Doherty, his colleague. Source, The Independent UK. And now time for a fun fact that'll either make you bang your head against the wall or put it in the junk drawer to be used later. Until 2016, the Happy Birthday song was not for public use, meaning prior to 2016, the song was copyrighted and you had to pay a license to use it. And here you thought you never broke the law. This has been the Stranger Than Fiction News on the Fringe FM. Again, I'm Vance Nesbitt, news anchor and sorcerer.
Message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOST drift.
Roger, nice to in orbit. The first message that comes to you is you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from the realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
The vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
That's right. You matter. You count. You come from a realm of God knows where. Welcome to Lighting the Void. I am your host, Joe Roop, and we are broadcasting to you all the way from a shack on a hill in the Mossy Creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas, live on the Fringe FM. Tonight, it is Wednesday, October the 9th, on into the 10th. Tonight, our guest is the one and only Tsakaris, podcast host and author from Skeptiko, is here. And his book, Why Science is Wrong About Just About Everything, I think I got the title right, is, Why Science is Wrong About Almost Everything. Is interesting indeed. And if you've listened to his show, you'll see that Tsakaris is not a man of podcast formula or a man of the norm. He really believes in what he's doing, and if he don't, he's going to tell you about it. And I think that's why he's so popular, and it's cool that he's back on the show with us tonight. I want to say, too, that this show is brought to you by GetTheTea.com. Make sure you go to the website at GetTheTea.com. Check out the new deals on the D365, where you can actually take the tea with you in pill form. It's not exactly super strength tea, but it's close to it, and I've got a bottle, and I can tell you it works. And it'll help you guard you from all the bull crap that's out there to get you. And if you don't think it's out there to get you, I'm about to release some pictures of myself online from my trip in Little Rock, and you can see what it's done to me, right? And I've actually lost weight from where I was at, so the radio has done me in. But there is a picture of me holding $500,000 that both, when I was there, Lady Ann and I went to the Capitol, and I wanted to, they let you hold $500,000 in your hand, and believe it or not, man, $500,000 is heavy as hell. Anyways, I'm on a rant here, but I'll release that picture soon enough. Also, this show is brought to you by AncientLifeOil.com. If you believe in CBD oil and what it does for your body, if you're one of those guys that actually have been cured from certain things, I ain't going to say what they are, then get the best CBD oil on the planet, AncientLifeOil.com, and also prepare with thefringe.com. Don't get caught unawares, and we're working on another sponsorship I told you guys about with optics. And so hopefully we'll have some night vision goggles in here. And, you know, this stuff just helps pay for the station. It really does. It all evens out. So if you go to any of our sponsors, just tell them, say, hey, man, the Fringe FM sent me. What do you got? And that would really help the station out. Thank you so much for you guys that have been doing that. And thank you for all the supporters. If you want to support the show, there's a donate button on the website. You can also get some swag. And I just got through talking to Katrina to only find out that some of these shirts are getting hung up, and I don't know why, so I'm working on that. I'm going to have to go through and figure out why your shirts aren't getting to you. And when they do, maybe we can figure out how to get you a discount on something else, because you shouldn't have to wait that long on your T-shirt. Nobody should. You pay for something, you want it now. Instant gratification. 2 weeks is too long, and a month is definitely way too damn long, so I apologize for that. Also, if you want to keep a traditional and journalistic approach to the truth to UFOs, you know where to go. UFOseekers.com, backed and supported by the Fringe FM and Lighting the Void. And if you want to check out their latest work with their latest season, YouTube.com/UFO Seekers. And follow them on Twitter. That's where the drama is, right? Twitter. So make sure you follow them there if you want to see all the scuffs that we get into on there. Yeah, at UFO Seekers on Twitter, 661 UFO 7889 is who you call if you've had a sighting or you've had an encounter. They want to know about it. You can check it out on the website too. Now, our guest, Alex, who's the host of Skeptiko and author of Why Science is Wrong About Almost Everything, is a successful entrepreneur turned science podcaster. And in 2007, he founded Skeptiko, which has become the #1 podcast covering the science of human consciousness. And Alex has appeared on many syndicated radio talk shows and podcasts, both in the U.S. and the UK, and is well known within the parapsychology and near-death experience research communities. Alex really needs no introduction, but he's here with us in the virtual shack. What's up, Alex? Thanks for coming back to the show, man.
Oh, Joe, it's so exciting. I got that email invite on the return visit. I was like, oh, I love talking to this guy, so it's great.
Yeah, I'm glad you're back, because last time I think you were just kind of feeling me out, you know? You stayed for just one segment, maybe a little bit, just to see what's up, right? See what's going on with the guy. And it turned out to be a fantastic conversation. I think I made a good friend, and, you know, I feel like you and I are both on the same mission. You know, we just want the truth, man. We don't want the BS. We want the truth, and we want to get somewhere with it. And I don't see anything wrong with that.
Truth seeker warrior. And you're right. You know, we were chatting a little bit before the show. I really hear that in what you're doing, because I am a fan. I am voiding it. You know, there's such a glut of podcasting in a good way. There's so many great shows out there that I want to listen to. I never get around to all of them, but you have so many of them that make their way, you know, onto my my player, and it's just really cool what you're doing. I feel like you're really trying to figure this stuff out.
I am, man. I'm trying to figure it out from a layman's point of view, right? But I still study about things. I try to, when I'm not caught up in something else that really doesn't matter. I try to study things that do matter. And some people think I'm entirely, you're too deep, man. You ever get that? You're just a deep person, you know? Well, so what? I mean, what does that mean? That you're a mundane person? Are you proud of that? Of course I'm a deep person. There's nothing wrong with being deep, and I just don't deny that part of me. I think the mysteries of life, science, and magic are wonderful, and there's always something new to learn. I mean, once you have some type of crazy paranormal or out-of-body experience, right, your life changes forever, in my opinion.
You know, that kind of relates to something I heard you talking about with a guest recently, and I really wanted to talk about it because you were kind of saying, if I read you right, that, you know, you can sometimes feel a little bit, I don't know, outside of, on the outside looking in. You know, you're out there in the world, and it just seems like, man, you can't really relate to people, is what I heard you say. And your guest was kind of saying, no, I don't really feel like that's the way it is. You know, we're all connected or something like that. And I was like, no, I know exactly what it means. Yeah, we're all connected on this deeper spiritual level. But man, I feel like that's one of the reasons I started podcasting is I could not find that real kind of connection on that level of just, hey, what's up? Aren't you wondering about the same thing, you know, that just happened? How can that be? How come no one's talking about that? So, you know, I definitely relate with that kind of feeling of abandonment, or I don't know what it is, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. It
is abandonment. And, you know, Liam Thomas Christopher wrote a good book on magic. It's pretty much a Golden Dawn book. It's called, I've brought it up on the show quite a few times. It's called Kabbalah, Magic, and the Great Work of Self-Transformation. And in the beginning of the book, he talks about how every one of us feel like that we're just a babed whale, kind of like just thrown on the beach of this place that we have no idea what the hell's going on, you know. And from the time we get older, we learn everything that we learn by our parents, right? We learn about love by our parents, which is a lot of times not the best place to learn about love. And then we learn, you know, about the rules of life, what's dangerous and what's not. And we're all, the point of that thing is that even when we're adults, we're still that. Yeah, we're grown.
Yeah.
We're still in this big body, but we're still babies walking around, not knowing what the hell's going on. We're just slowly kind of figuring stuff out. And science, which is the modern day priestcraft right now, is explaining, in my view, the least of things, the least of reality,
Yeah, well, that's been my mission, really. And I didn't understand it to be my mission when I started it on Skeptiko, but that's where I looked first. I was like, okay, I really do want to dive into who am I, why am I here? And of course, I'm going to go the legit route. I'm going to see what science says. Now, I have to say, in honesty, I had some serious doubts. But I did think I would find that they had their act a little bit more together than what I found. And it at some point in that journey, I really turned, skeptical and conspiratorial about the whole thing. It's like, how can there be this much BS to what they're dishing out here? I am not a biological robot in a meaningless universe. Why are they jamming that down my throat? And I don't believe it's just because they got their funding to say this. It just smacks of something more organized and controlled. And I don't mean it's some, smoky back room where they decide, what goes on. I just mean it in the sense of, if you want to control people, then this is pretty much what you'd feed them. You're nothing. You're a biological robot. There's no meaning to anything. If you feel anything like love or you feel anything like real meaning, forget it. And I think we don't appreciate how much that message is really packed into what's being passed off as science. How much that's really at the tail end of what they're pitching.
Yeah, well, everything that they're pitching is I don't know if I'd call it total BS. I mean, they're just putting names to things a lot of times, but when it comes to consciousness, I think they're so far away from being dead stick on what's really going on that it's crazy. If you're looking at neurology, it seems like every 6 months they're finding out, the brain does this, or now it's transferring signals wirelessly, even though when we cut the flesh apart, and what's really going on here. And the spiritual and metaphysical community, which they have no real scientific proof of what they're saying, but based on their experience, can tell you that they're just an antenna in this body, living an experience. And so here's the weird thing that happens, Alex, that I've noticed that becomes a big pain in the ass, right? Magic, mysticism, paranormal events, things that people are highly skeptical about. It seems that either it's all in our mind, or the way these things happen is they happen in a way to where the individual is the only person that's going to know what's really happening. And it's almost too hard to prove to anybody. You understand what I'm saying?
I do understand what you're saying. And I want to go back to the first thing you said, because you made an important distinction that I think throws people when I first kind of give my little spiel. And that's that, of course, science, or the way that I look at it, engineering is fantastic at some of the things that it does. You look at your phone, you look at your internet, you look at lasers, you look at all this stuff, and they have engineered, close enough. Shut up and calculate is phenomenal what we've been able to accomplish there. But I'm with you in terms of the consciousness thing. And that was really the premise of that book that I wrote a few years ago was, hey, straight up, if you get consciousness wrong, then as the big picture science questions, who are we, why are we here, you really can't get anything right, because everything reduces to how many angels fit on the head of a pin. And you ask a scientist that, and he goes, well, why, there aren't any angels, there can't be. It's like, okay, well, then let's take the most basic thing in the world, boiling water, So what temperature does water boil at? Well, 212 degrees. Well, but there's then you say, okay, but there's variables, right? I mean, if you're way up in the mountains in Colorado, it's at a different temperature. There's all these other things that make it a different temperature. How do we know consciousness can't affect it? As a matter of fact, we could even run an experiment like people have and said, let's get this really accomplished meditator or psychic and have them focus on that water. Can they change the temperature at which that water boils? Well, it turns out they can. We've run experiments related to that, maybe not that exact one, but one's pretty damn close to it. Well, they can. And as soon as you admit that can make a difference, that consciousness can make a difference, then that's what I think you and I are saying. And when you bring in the Magick thing and all the rest of that stuff, it's like, wait a minute, if you're really going to be honest about the enterprise of science, then you have to be honest and say, we don't really understand the whole thing. And we may be able to engineer your iPhone, but everything we're doing is an approximation that we're not even sure exactly why it all holds together as well as it does, because we don't understand this thing called consciousness. And, if I can go on one more minute,
Yeah, man, go for it.
One other thing that you said that I think is interesting, because I wind up having a lot of debates on the show, not so much that I seek it out because I don't, but I've just kind of had this open door, like I've stuck my neck out there, I thought, with the show from the beginning and said, anytime, anywhere, if you believe that I'm wrong about this thing about consciousness, if you really want to defend the science as we know it, consciousness, you are a biological robot thing, then come on and, we'll have it out. And I always start with those debates with the idea that what science really demands is that we don't have miracles. And I say, okay, if we're going to play by that game, no miracles, well, then let's start with this. The only thing we can really know for sure is that we're there, that we're conscious. Like, look, man, you don't even know, Joe. You don't even know if I'm conscious.
I got a good feeling, though.
No,
I got a real good feeling.
Hear me on this. This is philosophy, but it's like cool philosophy. It works. It's like, think about it. You know that you're conscious, but you don't know if I'm like some robot, right? I could just be some advanced AI. The only thing you know for sure is that you're conscious, right? And now you look at where science starts. Science starts and they want to sell you a miracle right from jump. They want to say, oh no, that thing that what you think you are, that's all created by your brain. But if you're really going to be honest about it, and I've had some really smart people on the show.
Bullshit.
Bernardo. Yeah, well, they say, hey, how do you know? How do you know that consciousness comes from the brain? You are invoking that miracle science. You are taking that first miracle. I didn't take it. I just said the only thing I know is I'm conscious.
Right.
You went ahead and did that. And that sounds like a trivial thing, but if you really break it down and get into the way that philosophy and science are supposed to work, that is like a key thing. So I don't know if other people appreciate the way that I do, but I think that's kind of cool.
If you ask them how to explain something like love, explain love. Well, they say, well, it's a neat trick. It's like oxytocin does this thing to your brain or whatever. Really, it's a neat trick. Have you seen what people do? Have you seen what people will go through, what they do, what they're willing to do, how crazy they get, all that when it comes to love, what they're willing to go through or what they're willing to do to others because they don't feel love have you seen that? Now, if that doesn't seem like there's nothing scientific about that, if you ask me. I mean, I can't prove it, Alex. I just know it based on my experience. That's all I can say,
My buddy Tim Freak has a great line about that because he says, my love is more than is evolutionarily necessary, or maybe he says biologically necessary. But the point is the same. It's like, there is no doubt that there's some neurochemical stuff going on, right? We all feel it when we're in love, but we also feel that there's more than that. And again, our rub, our complaint, you and I, when we're talking about it, is if you really look at where science demands that we don't let any more creep in than that. No, it can't be anything more than just your biological evolutionary yearnings. And man, it's just proven over and again that that's not true. And that's what I've been on, this mission of just proving it over and over and over again, and just kind of trying to jam it in people's face, particularly scientists,
Yeah, for sure. I've had scientists on the show. They all have their theories, and some of the, like Thomas Campbell's theory, of some of them are really doing good things in consciousness. But you'll see that once they have a formula made up, it's kind of made up, and their mind's made up about it. And I feel like in my life, I have this urge to grow. And I try to keep people around me that want to grow. And if I feel like they're not growing, then I don't. It's a weird thing that I do. I feel like, okay, well, I don't feel comfortable with you in my circle because you're complacent in your own illusions, right? And some of these illusions can be healthy or unhealthy. But what I've also realized is some people just want to live life too. They don't want the answers to this big stuff until it's too late. But what I've noticed is that when they get old and they get put in a nursing home and their families abandon them and everything else, and they're all by themselves and their kids barely come see them, and it's really bad, then they start worrying about the big questions. Then they're full of regret. And I don't want to be that way. I want to work this stuff out now, or as much as I can before I get there.
No, I hear you. And man, that's pretty deep what you're saying too, though, because, do you ever feel like, maybe this is just me, but I can overanalyze stuff too. I think the dogma thing that you're hitting on is key. I can't stand dogma, and I'm an inquiry to perpetuate doubt guy. I named this show Skeptiko before I even knew what it meant. And then I looked it up, and that's the definition of those ancient Greek philosophers, inquiry to perpetuate doubt. And I was like, holy crap, how does this stuff come into your head? I didn't write that. I didn't say that, but how did I come to that?
It went through you, man. Your soul did it. That's what I think.
But what I'm also open to, especially lately, is, the spiritual path, my spiritual path, has to be more than just questioning and doubting. And I don't know, this is like a really personal thing, but I wonder how you relate to this or what you think about it, Joe. Shoot. You ever see ordinary people that are incredibly wise? Just people that seem to have figured stuff out, like how to relate to other people, how to be good to their neighbors, and everyone likes them and respects them. And it makes me think, when you said when they die, and it's like, God, a friend of mine, kind of a soccer dad friend, his daughter played soccer with my daughter, and he was a big into airplanes, and especially stunt airplanes and stuff. And he crashed and died, and went to his funeral. And there's 400 people in this church on a Saturday afternoon in Southern California. I don't think 400 people would show up for me.
Yeah, right.
And there's all these people telling stories about, how, he was kind of a closed-minded Christian and said, was putting down this couple because they were a gay couple. And then the next thing you know, he's over at their house being the handyman for years, doing all this stuff. And they came to have this beautiful relationship. And I'm like, wow, some people, they don't have to, it's not as painful for them to, tackle these questions and figure them out, and they just do them with a grace that sometimes I wish I had.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. My father is that way, totally that way. But see, he's been through so much pain in his life that he could go through. He taught me a lot, you know. He taught me how to move on through pain, which I have found is a priceless gift, right? That he taught me. He taught me the value of working harder than your competition. Somewhere out there, there's somebody doing more than you. So if you want to be better at it, you got to do more than what you perceive that person is doing. And also, that sitting there wallowing in your pain is the worst thing that you can do. It's not that you don't want to feel it, right? We all feel pain. Most of our lives, we all have suffering, and that's why we have these big questions. But if you wallow in it, you don't progress. You don't move on. You're missing out on another experience, right? And that's kind of, you know, and I want to get into the out-of-body experience stuff with you, because I know last time I talked to you, you kind of wanted to go down that road and talk about that a little bit more. But that, when I learned that, how to let things go, I started having more experiences. And I mean like magical experiences, paranormal experiences, stuff that I did not believe in, did not think was real whatsoever. And they shifted paradigms for me, you know.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I do want to talk about that. I was really turned on by your interview with Greg Doyle, and that was a good one, man.
Yeah, Greg's something else. Greg's one of those out of nowhere guys. Yeah, we do got to take a break, but he's one of those out of nowhere guys that that just came out of nowhere and really could tap into it. Like if you take his course, he can get you there quick. But tonight we're with Alex Tsakaris from Skeptiko, Skeptiko.com. I've got the links there. It's Skeptiko with a K. There's K's in there, no C's. Right, Alex? Did I get that right? All
yeah,
K's?
You got it right. Yeah.
There you go. It's all K's. So Skeptiko with K's. That's your reference tonight. If you want to check out Alex's website while you're listening to the show, stay with us.
This is Corbin, son of the one and only Joe Root, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Did you know that qualified patients can access medical cannabis in all 50 states? CannaSense is a medical cannabis collective that helps patients in all 50 states gain access to cannabis medication. CannaSense does this with a streamlined process and strict compliance with the Compassionate Use Act of 1996, the Affordable Care Act, and the U.S. Constitution. It is important for each patient to understand the legalities involved, the costs, and the benefits of cannabis medication. Through truth, legalization, and education, the medical benefits of cannabis will supplant recreational perceptions, and the real vision for change will be realized. Let the people and their personal doctors take control of their medical cannabis decisions before the greed of big business takes over. The tipping point for change is today, and CannaSense is ready to lead the charge and enable legal access for all qualified patients to medical cannabis through its proven system. For more information, go to thefringe.fm/care or click the banner on the website today.
Alright everyone, this is Justin from the UK. Excuse the chitty. If you're into the Fringe and you want to hear the brass tacks, me old China plate, Joe Roop and his guests on Lighting the Void will open your mince pies. You need to shut your north and south and use your 10-speed gears and listen to them bubble. You could hear a Barry Crocker, no Brussels, but he ain't no holy friar. Anyway, you be the Barnaby Rudge and take a butcher's.
I think by now we can get the information.
I love Magick, and on Lighting the Void, each and every week, you will get to hear shows about magic, mysticism, and many other subjects that stretch your mind and imagination. So when I got my mind on the magic and the magic on my mind, I listened to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM. It's magic.
May the gods look with favor upon you.
You're wondering what we're going to do to you, aren't you?
What's up, Joe? Hey, man, I just wanted to say your show, dude, keeps getting better and better and better. I love Lighting the Void and the Fringe FM.
I'm getting older and noticing that my body just doesn't work as well as it used to. So I like to keep fit as possible by hitting the gym a few times a week. Recently, I started having a nagging bicep pain, and it got so bad I couldn't even lift the weights. When I was complaining about it to a friend, he told me about Angioprim. He said chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in veins and arteries that may cause blockages. You know, after just 1 week of taking Angioprim, the pain was gone, and now I'm back in the gym full strength. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in Angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. So to learn more, go to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com, or talk to a trained consultant. Call Angioprim toll free at 877-882-7221. You'll feel better with more energy. Call 877-882-7221 or go to the website angioprim.com.
Come, walk through the mossy creek and up the hill. Never mind the flashing lights and otherworldly shadows. They stay hidden within the trees. Come, step up to the shack and begin your journey to the answers that you seek. This is Lady Anne, and you are listening to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM.
You're listening to Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. If you would like to text, you can text in at 501-777-5631.
I want to say too real quick that the October skies in our month of Halloween, look, this is going to be one hell of a time if you've got a telescope, if you've got something to watch the skies with. We're going to get being poured down on pretty much all month from what I hear. So if you're a sky watcher like me, this is the good time to do it. I used to complain about the cold months, but I forget just how clear and beautiful the night sky is. And on tonight, on this fall night, we're here with Alex Tsakaris from Skeptiko.com, Skeptiko podcast. And before the break, I was talking to you, Alex, about how that questioning things changed my life when it came to the out-of-body experience. And I think before I go down that road, I want to say that the first thing that got my attention was the Joe Rogan podcast. I think everybody listened to that back in the day. And Duncan Trussell was one of my favorite guests that would come on, which was his friend. And they would talk about deep stuff, you know. And, of course, Rogan would play the skeptic, and Duncan would pretty much talk about, the more mystical stuff. And they would go with it. And it was a cool show to listen to. And it was something that was inspiring and inspired a lot of podcasts. And now it feels like it is... God, I hope I don't say this wrong. It feels like it's a press release now. Like it's just another Oprah show, but in long format, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of feelings about that, similar to what you're talking about. I mean, awesome on the UFC stuff. You know, if you care about that.
Yeah.
If you care about that, great announcer, all that. But he's always been a skeptic. You know, if you go back, and he has an unbelievable skill at kind of, I don't want to say playing both sides, because that's part of his role. You know, that's like putting him down for doing what he's supposed to do. You know, you're a host. You have to allow all voices to be heard, kind of thing. But when you really break down what he's saying at the end of the day, it's very mainstream skeptical. And I do feel like you're saying that that's gone to another level of where it does feel like programmed content in some ways. You know, I mean, like people have accused him of selling out, and who can blame him? I mean, he's reached a level where I think he's financially really doing well with the show. Fantastic for him. But is he restricted, or is he playing to a certain message given that? I don't know. It sure sounds that way to me. And then, but then every once in a while, you know, he does some stuff and you're like, wow, that's so groundbreaking. Where else would I hear that? You know, he gets somebody on and it's Laird Scranton, or it's, you know, it's somebody,
Robert
you know,
Schock,
really,
or
Yeah, Robert Schoch, and it's just, Bob Lazar, the Bob Lazar thing he did, even though he was kind of playing the skeptic, he was holding it in a way that really let some information out there that I thought was fantastic. I was glued.
I got to tell you, man, it's the Bigfoot thing. What hurts this community more than anything, and what I've found, and I'm not trying to duck on these people because I'm friends with some of them, but it's ufology and cryptozoology have really done a number on this community. And I think it's the reason why we don't get taken seriously. Ufology is crazy right now. It's like celebrity wash stuff that happens. It's insane.
But see, here's the thing, Joe. Here's the thing. It's all ultimately going to be controlled misinformation, disinformation / social engineering control. And that sounds wild, conspiratorial from a guy who does a science consciousness podcast. Yeah. But let me just walk you down my path, how I got there. And I'll always credit Gordon White from Rune Soup. I'm a Magick guy like you. But for kind of just pointing out this tiny little thing that really shifted it for me. And he said, look at the remote viewing project. And you've had a bunch of really top-notch people on there to talk about that and talk about that history. And everyone at this point knows the history and Stargate and Stanford Research Institute, and they did it, and they government paid for it, and they found Jimmy Carter went on TV and said these guys found the plane that no one else could find. So we're all like marching along saying, yeah, remote viewing, that's legit, that's real, and all this. Hey, if they knew at the time remote viewing was real, then they knew that we're not biological robots in a meaningless universe, right? So in the first segment, that was my rant, Well,
a good point.
Put those two things together. The smartest people inside the game knew they were way past that. Knew all that was bullshit. They knew that the real stuff was out there, this consciousness, connection, and the people doing it, like Ingo Swann. Go read his book. He's connecting with ET. He's talking about the structures on the other side of the moon. So are we really going to kind of bifurcate that and say, oh, no, he was just doing secret spying against Russia? No. And all those guys who are the pros from Stanford Research, Hal Puthoff, Russell Tarr, all those guys say, they'll say this, if Ingo Swann said it's true, then it's true. The guy never lied. Take another guy, been on my show, Joe McMonagle, important guy in this whole thing. What is he doing? He's talking about remote viewing Mars 1 million years ago and the beings on it and the structures on it. People, just go check this out. This is what these guys said. So whenever you hear remote viewing, whenever you hear CIA remote viewing, Stanford Research Institute, remember, that's all part of it. They knew that from the beginning. They never denied it. So, but now it's layered with this, oh, isn't this UFO stuff crazy? So when I jump on the conspiratorial thing, that's what I'm saying. There's enough conspiracy right there. How do you know this? And then at the same time, allow this other thing to perpetuate science and the Skeptiko, Michael Shermer is a friend of me. He's been on my show multiple times. So it is a complete.
Yeah, but those guys, they are set. They're dead set on being right about everybody's being wrong. But hold on. It's
not just, I shouldn't have started with Michael Shermer, because Michael Shermer is a self-identified skeptic. Yeah. The thing that gets me is the Neil deGrasse Tyson kind of thing. That he is as skeptical as they get. He is biological robot in meaningless universe. That's what he says. You are nothing. You are nothing. The universe is nothing. There is no. He stands in direct contrast to everything we know about remote viewing. And everything we know about remote viewing is true on such a more, like I said, such a more provable way. You know, they have 300,000 pages you can go read on all their experiments that they did. And they just gave it to West Georgia University or whatever. And Ingo Swann, all his papers. You can go prove all that to yourself. And yet the most public figure in science would have to be Neil deGrasse Tyson. He stands in direct opposition to all that. How can that be? How is that not a conspiracy that all those guys have lined up? Because, again, I'm pounding on the same thing, but their message is very much a control message, very much make you feel desperate.
Do you think they're aware of
nothing.
It? Do you think Rogan's aware that he's being manipulated?
No.
I don't think he is aware of it at all either.
No, because you know what? I mean, we all experience this. You can find it's not hard to find people with a different point of view. You know, I mean, it just isn't. You know, you take football fans. You know, we all realize that's just a fan. It's a fanatic. But you can find people that are fanatic about this team or that team, and you can't talk them out of that. Or religion. You know, but take football. It's kind of easier.
Bigfoot. Yeah.
Same thing, right? So is Bigfoot really any different than SEC football?
No.
I mean, some guy jumps onto one kind of thing and, you know, that's his thing. And, you know, he's really interested in that. And what about the hair samples? And what about the DNA? And, you know, doesn't want to hear anything else. And, you know, hey, that's kind of human nature.
Yeah, it is. It's human nature for sure. It's just, it feels like something's being controlled. For sure. It does. It feels like the narrative's being controlled there. And now, because he's such a big influencer, that he can get any name on that show he wants to. All he's got to do is make a phone call. And most people will show up. So he talks about, he's more in the zeitgeist than he used to be. Back when he started, it wasn't really the zeitgeist. It was alternative consciousness, psychedelic stuff, you know, you name it. Now, if it's super important, if it's in the zeitgeist, he's having them on the show. And anytime that happens, I think it's important that we keep up with things. Don't get me wrong. But when that's what you're all about, it seems like it just smells fishy to me. Not to mention that his own friends on the show have said that he was having meetings with people, and I saw Rogan's face, man. Look, I know when people are being manipulative, man. I know it. And sometimes I let people manipulate me. And I know when people are being, when they're not being genuine. You can see it on their face. I've seen you recognize it in people before. I've watched your facial expression change when somebody wasn't being genuine with you or trying to BS you, right? And I feel like that when it happens on a big level, like you're talking about, like social engineering or whatever, that we don't see it enough. We just believe it. And I'm going to tell you something else too, Alex, that scares the living hell out of me, that I have learned just recently, that there are people living day to day, by and by, based on their online, who they are online. Not in the real world, but who they are online or on Facebook or somewhere else. We've become detached. And to me, that's so far from consciousness exploration, it's not even funny. Podcasting is supposed to be an intimate thing. Like when I listen to your show, I feel like it's an intimate thing, not that it's a status thing for you, you know.
Well, it'd be nice to think that we're all kind of immune from either manipulation or greed, you know. But
we're not.
But we're not. And we're also not immune from the tap on the shoulder. You know, because hell, you look at people who've been ground up by the machine, you know. Like I brought this up the other day, you know, there are no whistleblowers anymore. You know, if you just think about it, you know, even like 10 years ago, I think, or certainly longer than that, there are genuine whistleblowers.
You mean like Snowden and
Yeah. And now, if you're a real legitimate whistleblower, you are in jail, right? They will find a way to prosecute you, unless it's, you know, some little minor kind of corporate misdeed or something like that. But in terms of, I guess what springs to mind is everyone fell for this UFO disclosure psyop that was the December
to the stars thing.
Yeah, to the stars thing. And, and when they come out and they say, well, he's a whistleblower, whistleblower from inside the Department of Defense. It's like, no, he's not a whistleblower. Whistleblowers from inside the Department of Defense who tell secrets about UFOs wind up with a little visit where they say, we're going to kill you. We're going to kill your family. We're going to kill everybody. Right. And hey, this has been our history. Just go read the files. This is Paul Benowitz and Richard Doty back in the day, where they drove the guy crazy and then come out and admit, yeah, that's what we had to do, to protect the secret. So, Lou Elizondo is a whistleblower, and then lo and behold, he says, oh, but you know what? The information wasn't classified. And you go, wait a minute, what do you mean? That information, if that isn't classified, then what do we have classified information for? If secret projects that identify spacecraft from other galaxies or, just spacecraft that are interfering with major naval operations off the coast of San Diego, if that isn't classified, what is classified? But no one questions that. And if you do question it, then you might wind up with a little visit. And I don't know what any of us, I don't want that visit. I've never had that visit, but I wouldn't want it. And if I got that visit, I don't know that I wouldn't just say, okay, what am I supposed to say now? What am I supposed to stop talking about?
I don't feel that though. Like, and I've even had friends tell me, close friends, even recently, like when I'd say something out in public, they'd be like, hey, be careful. Be careful about what? What are they going to do? Right? Like, I don't see the threat, but then when you get to, but I'm not on that level yet, right? So I'm sure, I'm almost certain that some form of intelligence has contacted either Rogan directly or manipulatively, and is trying to influence what he's pushing out to us. Look, Facebook has done it. They've admitted it. They've done social engineering experiments. They've been put on trial for it, actually. They've admitted it. Google's done it. They're all doing it. What makes you think they wouldn't do it to specific individuals that cause movements or that have big followings? Of course they would. And they can manipulate it any way they want.
Absolutely. And it's been documented over and over again. I had a guy on the show, physicist John Brandenburg, and he's just top-notch physicist, and he's been on the Ancient Aliens show as well because some of his work does intersect with that. In particular, he's found some signatures of nuclear explosions on Mars that give off, they change the isotope kind of thing, and it gives off a certain pattern in the radiation signature that they can scientifically, as a physicist, as an astrophysicist, you can kind of say, you can date it and you can say, hey, the only way we ever know that it happens is with nuclear explosions. It doesn't happen in other space debris and other space dust out there. And his conclusion is, at the end of the day, there must have been some kind of event like that on Mars. This is like a side topic, but I thought it's really interesting because then it not only, hey, isn't it interesting that seems to correspond with, like I was telling you, Joe McMonagle, one of the most respected remote viewers, and he winds up saying the same thing. And then I just had another remote viewer on, Courtney Brown, who is a pretty interesting guy and does some pretty elaborate kind of presentations with his remote viewing, but he kind of found the same thing on Mars, interesting enough. But roll it all back, here's the story about Brandenburg that he told on my show. He goes, there's this guy who contacts him, and he's a physics professor from a local junior college. And he says, hey, man, I really like your work. And, tell me more about what you're doing, and this and that. So Brandenburg, he's kind of a geeky science guy, and he's just telling him and stuff like that. So time goes on, and he's at a conference. And this guy comes up to meet him. The junior college professor comes up to meet him. And they're talking. And then the next thing you know, another guy comes over and says, like, hey, Frank, how you doing? How's things over at, what was it? DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency. How's things at the Defense? No, he didn't say it that directly, but what happened, you get the idea.
Yeah.
I mean, Brandenburg said, like, the blood drained from his face, he's like, because he realizes that this guy has been working him and playing him to get whatever little information. It's not like he threatened his family or anything like that, but it was like a personal, because it was on the show kind of thing where a guy can tell you, this is how it works. This is the tap on the shoulder. This is you're being monitored, dude.
See, I see that because I feel like, okay, imagine if that was you, right? And I'm the kind of guy that once I know, if I feel like I'm being manipulated, I'm going to let it happen just to see where it takes me, right? I don't run from it. Would you do that too? I would definitely do that. I'd be like, I would just go with it and just to see where it takes me. What do you think?
Yeah, that's an interesting play, man. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the worst thing that can happen is, the worst thing that can happen is, back of the head kind of thing, but it would be interesting, right, to see where it would take you. But I've been that way my whole life. Friends, family, you name it. Like if I feel like I'm being manipulated, I want to see how far it goes, where it's going to go, how deep people are willing to do it, and if normal people can do it, imagine what the CIA does on a daily basis.
Oh, yeah. I mean, next level kind of game playing. Richard Dolan just published a really interesting interview with Kit Green. Here we are. We're going to talk about all UFO stuff, but that's okay. But if folks don't know, and they probably do know who Kit Green is, but he was head of, and he's still alive, he's still doing his thing, but he was head of the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works project where just admittedly a lot of this UFO related kind of industrial stuff like reverse engineering stuff and all that kind of stuff was going on. And Kit Green has said, yes, we did that. And that always means we're still doing it, right? Because those things never stop. But here's Kit Green's story. And people can go look this up. Richard Dolan published it. He goes, I was convinced that, way back in the day, do you remember, like this is ancient history, but remember when the Roswell autopsy film came out?
Yeah.
I mean, that was like a long, long time ago. But the autopsy, and he said he was brought into a secret meeting and he was shown this stuff. And because of the other information he was personally privy to, he believed that it was real. The alien autopsy thing. He was told that it's real by, the intelligence agency that came in. They said, okay, here, this is real stuff. It's, the alien autopsy stuff. Now, follow this story. So Kit Green, who is like the ultimate insider, I mean, like, I don't even want to know how top secret, his clearance is. He's told this stuff is real. And now what he says, and he says it in this really obscure kind of intelligence way in this interview, but it's quite clear what he says. He says, I now understand that they were feeding me disinformation, that they knew that the alien autopsy film that they were showing me was not genuine, but they also believed that I would think that it's genuine because of my previous experience and because they had told it to me. And what their real agenda was to see how far that disinformation would go through the system. And I just read that and I was like, oh my God, these guys are so next level. They are so next level.
Yeah. Follow the manipulation. Follow it.
Yeah, it's like, and then Kit Green again is saying, oh, and then I understood, of course, that's, standard intelligence procedure, follow this. I'm like, holy crap, man, they're playing 3D chess, as they say,
Yeah, they're on next level stuff, for sure. But what I think is, and I had a guest come on tell me, we're at the top of the hour here too, but he told me, he said, look, You can get past all of this. There's one way to get past all of this. If you make every decision you make, be it online, be it in your daily life, in your content creation, whatever you do, and base it in love and compassion. If everybody decided to do that, not just based at things in fear, we could take control back of this country. And that's what they don't want you to know.
That's awesome. You know, we ought to talk about that next segment, is the spiritual part, because I'm really, really interested in trying to break that down from a practical, kind of somewhat scientific, methodish kind of way.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll see. Now you know why I'm into magic, because it's like science and spirituality in a scientific way. Alex Tsakaris, man, always a fantastic conversation with this guy. No telling where the rabbit hole is going to go. Into the void we go. It's past midnight here in Arkansas.
This is Crow 777, and you are listening to The Fringe FM.
OMG! People are jumping on board to the Life Change Tea Regiment. Brew, steep, and drink for a gentle, taste great cleanse. It's changing how they feel. See what everybody's talking about. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Life Change Tea aids in digestive slowdown and helps people get moving down a healthy path. We won't make claims. We'll just let you decide. Experience is much better than a commercial anyway. If you want results, log on to getthetea.com and purchase your super strength cleansing tea. You won't be disappointed. And if you're looking for some mind-body suggestions, go to YouTube and punch in the search bar Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. Put power into your health now. So, getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com for super strength tea. And YouTube, Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now for valuable suggestions. Getthetea.com. The tea that makes you go.
I'm Ryan Gable, and I want to remind you to keep your radio, phone, tablet, or computer tuned to The Fringe FM. And visit the website, thefringe.fm, to listen to the entire lineup of shows. You can also catch my broadcast, The Secret Teachings, Monday through Friday, beginning at 12 a.m. midnight U.S. Pacific Time, right here on The Fringe FM.
Alex X.
Hi, I'm Alex Exum, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
OMG! People are jumping on board to the Life Change Tea Regiment. Brew, steep, and drink for a gentle, taste great cleanse. It's changing how they feel. See what everybody's talking about. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Life Change Tea aids in digestive slowdown and helps people get moving down a healthy path. We won't make claims. We'll just let you decide. Experience is much better than a commercial anyway. If you want results, log on to getthetea.com and purchase your super strength cleansing tea. You won't be disappointed. And if you're looking for some mind-body suggestions, go to YouTube and punch in the search bar Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. Put power into your health now. So, getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com for super strength tea. And YouTube, Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now for valuable suggestions. Getthetea.com. The tea that makes you go.
This is Reverend John M. Polk. Please visit me at johnpolkmedia.com and visit my show, Quantum Hologram Matrix, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, every Tuesday on thefringe.fm.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners, did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone app or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Hey,
is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
Hola, Fringe listeners. This is Dave Cruz of Beyond the Strange, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Dehydro bottle is unsurpassed. Engineered with precision, the Dehydro cap is completely rechargeable. As the demoisturizing agents become saturated, the crystals in the cap change color from royal blue to colorless to pink. To totally restore dehydrating properties, just place cap in a 400 degrees oven for 10 minutes until royal blue color returns. Let cool and replace on bottle immediately. Tested and proven thousands of times, the Dehydro cap is guaranteed for 1 full year. Removes moisture and preserves many other pharmaceutical substances, including lactose and mantanol. Once pulverized, substance remains completely dry and powdery, even if your Dehydro bottle is accidentally immersed. As a result, you'll have no more bottles streaked with filmy moisture, no more rocks to chop and flake, and risk being lost. And one-step Dehydro bottle ensures both safety and convenience. Use coupon code GIVEMEAFIX or send $12 for each unit to P.O. Box 865 Stony Brook, New York 11790. These allow 3 weeks for delivery. Dehydro bottle is a patented scientific system guaranteed to absorb all moisture from coke and other substances that are harmed or destroyed by water and humidity. Materials pulverized in a Dehydro bottle are reduced to microscopic levels, as fine as talcum powder, and remain in this dry, extra fine state until used. Protect your investment in a Dehydro bottle, the best safeguard you can have. Where better paraphernalia is sold.
To call Joe, pick up the phone, dial 1-800-588-0335, toll free from the United States or Canada. To call Joe, pick up the phone, dial 1-800-588-0335, toll free from the United States or Canada. You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
Maybe if I get Kurt to say it twice, someone will do it, right? Call Joe, right? To call Joe. Look here.
To call Joe, pick up the phone,
Pick up
dial
the phone.
1-800.
No, I'm just playing. We're here with Alex Tsakaris tonight. I'm just trying to have a little bit of fun. And I hope you guys like the Dehydro bottle commercial that I made. Lady Ann made another one called Snow Mill, and we're going to continue to do this stuff. October is going to be the month of fun, experimentation, and creation for the Fringe FM. And I was just talking to you about that, Alex. Like, I feel like radio has, I don't know, man. It's boring, and I don't want it to be boring anymore. I want this thing to be fringy as fringy can get. You know what I mean? The art of audio has to come back. It's time for it to come back.
Well, it's always evolving, and it is frustrating when it feels stagnated, and sometimes it does a little bit.
Oh, yeah, sure. That's why I like listening to your show, man, because it's relief, actually. So I can tell you guys, if you subscribe to the Skeptiko podcast and you're into this stuff, if you're into actually searching for the truth, you're going to hear some debates. You're going to hear a lot of like what we're doing tonight. But if you want relief from like the norm and you get the Skeptiko podcast, you're going to hear some passion there, man. You're going to hear somebody that's really trying to figure stuff out like me. I don't, honestly, when I say this, Alex, I don't feel like there's too many people out there that's kind of doing what I'm doing in as far as getting somewhere goes, you know? But I really feel like, and you said this to me before the show, and I'll say it about your show, that I really feel like your show is getting somewhere too, and you've been doing it for quite some time.
Well, you know, we were talking about that because I do see that in you, and I see that in your show. And to me, that's so satisfying for those reasons that we talked about right from the beginning. You know, if you're a seeker, you know, and you have that thing in you that you just feel like you need to kind of understand it, then when you recognize it in someone else and it's genuine, it's kind of irresistible. And that's what I see in what you're doing. And it's not what I see, you know, like we're talking about Coast to Coast, which not a lot of people listen to anymore, but I guess it still has a pretty substantial audience. I shouldn't say that because a ton of people do still listen to it, and they do some good stuff. I don't want to kind of poke the bear there, but I remember when I was on that show, I had I was super excited to be on that show because I had listened to it for so many years, and I always thought, God, if I could make that, I'd kind of make it. And wow, what a disappointment, I mean, I didn't feel like they were trying to get anywhere. It's like, send the questions that we should ask you in advance, which I guess you have to do. You have to do, if you're, I don't know. You're right. You don't. You're right. You don't.
You don't have to do that.
It's like, we're just going through the motions here. Nothing's really going to happen that's going to be unexpected or outside the box kind of thing. And that's why I guess I do like the debates, even though I don't
Did you get some book sales though? I think anybody yeah, of course you did. Like, cuz I've got people that come on this show like guests, and they feel like if they go on Coast or something, or Fade to Black or something like that, they're like, I just don't want you mad. I've had that happen a couple of times, right? And I'm like, listen, do you want book sales? Do you want to sell your product? And they're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, then you need to go on Coast to Coast, period. Exactly. That's where you get your stuff sold at. It's just sheer numbers. It's a numbers game. And, but George, he's doing his thing and people like him. And everybody talks about how he's such a nice guy. I've never met the man. But he's doing his thing. He's got the radio voice. I even got a Nori set up here, brother. Like, I don't have the mic he's got, but I've got the boom and everything that they got, and trying to get that same sound. It ain't easy. So it's there's something to the art of that when it sounds like everything's under control. Which sometimes my stuff just gets chaotic. I mean, the chicken wire doesn't line up, and the internet goes down, and we're off the air, right? I mean, that happens sometimes here. But a lot of people like that. They like that factor.
Well, you do kind of have a little bit of a balance there, buddy, because you do sound really, really good, and you come through, and there is something about that you're right. It is comforting, and it's somewhat hypnotic, and you make that happen, that experience happen, and that's pretty cool. But I think we're both saying the same thing, is that there's a space here, a lane, like they like to say, for the alt media, because the alt media for a lot of us is kind of watered down, and we want the alt media, somebody who's going to kind of add some new punch to it, and is really clearly not been co-opted and doesn't have some other agenda that we're not aware of,
or they're not original, or they're trying to sound like somebody else, or you got to be original. And I tell everybody this when it comes to creation: be original. And what I've found too that frustrates me, God, it frustrates the hell out of me, is the most talented people I've ever met in my life are some of the most conflicted people in real life. They don't believe in themselves. They don't know what they have. And no matter how many times you tell them how good they are, what they have to offer, they will not believe it. They don't see it. And I'll say, look, I've worked with quite a few radio hosts now, and podcast hosts, and people that think they're something that they're not, and people that are something or could be, and the ones that have the most talent are the most conflicted, man. And I'm dead serious about that. They're the most interesting and conflicted people that have some severe self-esteem issues. And it's very sad. That right there ought to tell you something's wrong with this whole thing that we're doing.
Well, isn't it funny? I mean, gosh, we're kind of getting into some interesting offbeat topics, but I think it goes back to something you were saying early on in the show about, you didn't say wounded or pain or, I guess you were saying pain, and it's like, I think that just comes through. But the flip side of that I think is so tricky is there's a part that we're drawn to in people that do seem a little bit broken or a little bit, off, we can kind of identify with it too. And that makes a strange mix, because then we have people that rise to some prominence, and then we find out that brokenness is kind of corrupted too. I mean, how many of our media people are, just really, really kind of not so good people,
right. Yeah. Celebrities. Shady individuals out there for sure. Yeah,
exactly. Not in the alt community, and kind of the more mainstream community. So it's just a tricky thing.
It is. I heard it's offbeat, and I know that I'm taking this somewhere else. So it's like, this is like backroom shop talk with Alex Tsakaris. But man, you're like a 10-year podcaster. I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. This is, it's time for things to change. Like, I think it's time for people to come out and just express themselves. God bless. You got the internet. You can do it. I promise you can. You just got to be consistent. And I'm sure you could talk about that. Like, you've been putting episodes out for 10 years. Consistency pays off. It just does. You find your own way after a while, Yeah,
I mean, that hasn't really been so much my thing. I'll tell you my little secret.
Oh, here we go. This is good
stuff. No, it's not, because it's the opposite of what you're thinking. Is I came at things from the business world, and I always felt surprised that anyone was out there at all. And my thing was, play the game and don't let the game play you. So it's really kind of the opposite of what you're saying. I was like, this is all play. Yep. I've had a chance. I've had a chance to, like, because I mean, I hate to do this, but when you're in the arena of money, it's like sports. Like, you used to play football. I used to play football. It's like a different arena.
You played pro ball, though, didn't you?
No. I played college at some rinky-dink college in Illinois, at Western Illinois Leathernecks. Go Leathernecks. But the thing is, when you're in that arena, it's just kind of a different thing, that physical contact arena. That's why I think people like the MMA. I get that. It's like you can't fake that. Well, I think business. And you said, like, your dad kind of taught you some lessons in that. I think business is the same way. If you're really going to be successful, if you're really going to make some kind of dough where you can kind of kick back, there's something that goes with that just kind of trains your mind and trains your kind of sensibility to bullshit, and also to just what it takes to be successful. So when I did podcasting, it was like, man, this is easy. Just play the game, but don't let the game play you, because this is all just fun, And I don't know, that was, I still have to remind myself to not
but
take it too
somewhere along
seriously.
The line, though, did it not turn into a passion project for you, though?
No, it was always a passion project. I guess what I'm saying is that it's not fun when you get hooked on the numbers.
Right, exactly.
Like what you just said was really telling when you said, and there was that tone shift in your voice when you said, hey, man, if you want to sell books, coast to coast, you know what I mean?
That's
like,
that's truth.
That's just being real. That's just being real, So, like, when people ask, well, what are your numbers? I mean, how many followers, how many listeners, all the rest of this. And it's like, some of that stuff is public and some of that stuff isn't. And people are always feeling the need to inflate their numbers and pump all that stuff up. Yeah. And it can get in everyone's head, and everyone realizes that, but there's no need to fake it. Play the game. Don't let the game play you. Don't get hung up in, how many subs you got on YouTube and all the rest of that. Because, back to what you were talking about when we went to the break, you got into talking about the spiritual stuff. And it's like, one of the spiritual truths of podcasting is that your show is reaching the people it's supposed to reach. There's somebody out there, and we all get those emails. You as a podcaster and as a radio host, you get those emails that sustain you. There's somebody saying, wow, you said this and this changed. You did this show, you did this interview, and it changed my life in some tiny little way.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Now I understand why I'm really doing this. I'm doing this because in some way that I don't understand, it fits into some bigger plan, and that's why I'm doing it,
Yeah, you're so dead on about that. The first one that I ever got, that's what kept me going. Looks like we got a caller from, I believe, the Houston area. You're on the air with Alex Tsakaris. Who are we speaking with?
Well, it's not quite the Houston area, Joe, but it's down here in East Texas.
Oh, good God. It's Rambling Randy. I should have known. Your phone's making crazy clicking noise, brother. You got a question for Alex? What in the world is that
I'm
noise?
Go direct with it. Is that better?
That's better. What's on your mind, brother?
What a wonderful opportunity to sit and listen to y'all, and especially from a vantage point that I've got for the last year and a half. I've gone all over the U.S. and other places meeting radio talk show hosts.
Interesting.
And the things that y'all are saying are so spot on. I have never seen, short of printers, if you've ever dealt with anybody in the printing business, and some graphics people, other than those people right there, these talk show hosts are a special breed within themselves, bar none. I mean, the degree of the broad spectrum of well, I have to say, being the only person kind of on the planet, kind of a group. And when you find one that's not, that y'all use this word authentic, they can say anything and people will come back, because it's that feeling like I got when I first heard you, Joe, like your guest is saying now, is that when you use this forum, and I truly believe that the revolution will be on the radio.
It'll be on the audio, you mean, right?
Well, in the big picture, using word pictures, I think radio got the message across, just that it will not be delivered via the video as much it would be the audio platform. I believe that. I believe that a lot.
I appreciate you saying that, man. Go ahead, though. I got time restraints here. What's on your mind, though?
You do?
Yes, sir.
The thing I wanted to point out here is that if we all that listen to shows like this and others that are learning a whole lot had the ability to be cohesive together and have coherent thought, that's when the powers that we say should not be would recognize there's a ripple in the matrix. All these things that we're doing now, there's really no threat to them until you present and actually implement a solution that would weaken their position, and that's when you get the attention. But if it's done properly and done with numbers, they can't step on every ant in the middle of the football field. The football field's covered with red ants. There's no way. It's the same principle as the blockchain technology.
I understand.
And that's kind of what I've Joe, great show, and I'll be in touch soon, okay?
Thank you. You better be in touch, brother. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah.
Rambling Randy from the Rabbit Hole Herald, y'all. Yeah, so he's got some projects going on, too, that I believe we're going to be introducing to y'all shortly. But what do you think, Alex? Do you think he's got a point?
Well, I disagree with this point, but it's a really good point. It's a great point, and a lot of people hold to it. I don't. And that's that, if we just get enough of us together, we can kind of turn this thing around, and we will, rock the powers that be,
right.
And we're going to change things. And it's like, man, that's when we were talking earlier, and I was telling you about the Kit Green thing. And it's like, you don't think those guys have this figured out? Like, they don't even have to, they haven't even had to raise a pinky finger to stand against the alt. And I know this isn't what a lot of people want to hear, but it's like, to me, where we have to get to is where you left off at the last segment, is your own spiritual development.
That's right.
And I'd ask the question, that we're about to ask is, what is that spiritual development about? And I have this feeling that it kind of transcends the game. It's like, let them play the game, because I'm moving past that. It's like, shit, as soon as you understand that you don't really die, and that's like all over the place, right? You can't escape the fact that consciousness survives death. The evidence is overwhelming any way you want to look at it, and we can talk about it scientifically, and you've talked about it a bunch of times on your show. But fully process that. You don't really die. Oh, okay. So maybe this game and, defeating this, maybe that isn't what it's really all about. But there's a whole bunch of questions that go with that I think are you were starting to point us in that direction, and I want to hear more of your thoughts about how that spiritual path kind of thing.
Well, yeah, I can definitely talk about it, man. That's that's a big subject with me, because what I started noticing is that people that use either scientists that were studying consciousness, or people that were studying consciousness using scientific principles and methods by, trying to delete variables and stuff, the scientific method, would ultimately run into the same things. And I'm actually working on a book about this, and I have been for some time. I've been making an outline. It's the first time I've talked about it on the air, but are ultimately saying the same things that the ancient mystics and Renaissance magicians have been saying. Now, a lot of people like Dean Radin have talked about this in their book, like Magic is Real stuff, but what I want to show is specific examples of how, say, a Renaissance magician, and I probably shouldn't be talking about this because somebody will write a book about it tomorrow, but how are ultimately coming to the same conclusions. So I'll give you an example, like Robert Monroe in Journeys Out of the Body. If you really read his books, from book 1 all the way to book 3, and then you start reading other books by astral travelers, ones that we kind of know deep down that are the real deal, their experiences line up directly with these magicians' experiences, except the difference is that the magicians are using the astral realm for a place of spiritual development, and they're using their own set of programs, whether they are real or not. They're using these sets of programs to develop themselves intellectually, spiritually, with the same principles that the scientists they're talking about. They're just calling them different things. That's all it is. They're calling them different things. So I'm looking at this, the mage and the scientist, who believe that they're two opposite people, yet are actually getting to the same goal. And it's funny. It's like looking at the same side of a coin that doesn't want to agree with itself. And it's hilarious to watch. And I've wrote down quite a few specific examples on how this stuff works. So the out-of-body experience, once I realized that was real, Alex, I mean, that was one of those things that changed my life. And to this day, it is the only thing that I do not doubt. I doubt death more than I do the out-of-body experience, because I've actually lived it and walked it. I've watched myself sleep. I was there. I was in that locale one Robert Monroe was talking about, and it is a freaking trip the first time it happens. They say don't give in to astonishment because you'll go right back to your body. Well, I've never felt that way. And with friends, I've tried to do it with friends, even people that I date, like girls I've dated. I'm like, hey, let's try to do this stuff together. Even listeners on the show, I want to show them this experience, because if I feel like I can show them this experience, then all of the crap that is plaguing their minds will go away, right? And then we can start putting the pieces together. And so I went down the road of Western ceremonial magic because there's a scientific method to it. In development of spirituality, in the process of manifestation, in the way that you journal to see what works and what doesn't work. And it is a fascinating thing to do. And I feel like that I've been distracted from it as of late, and I've got to get back into it. I will tell you this, and I'll make it a very solid admittance to you today, that I did practice a very powerful banishing ritual this morning as soon as I woke up. Actually, not this morning, but yesterday morning, as soon as I woke up. And I wanted to be at a certain place in my life. And I said, in this ritual, I specifically said, no matter what, no matter how bad I want something or I feel like something should be right, I need all of the things that are vamping me the most out of my life right now. Things or people that do not have my best interest in mind, especially the self-serving kind. And it was a blow. I found out that people in my family were doing it that very day. You know, people that were close to me that I just didn't want to realize were doing it. I found out in every way imaginable. And it's almost like I can't prove it scientifically, Alex, but I know that's what happened, right? And I feel like if I can write this book or just show these things, if I can just line them up in outline form, I can show both parties that they're doing the same thing. Does that make any sense?
Oh, man, we're getting into it now. We are getting into it now. You know, I love listening to your show. That's the story you tell of this guy who's out taking a break from work, sitting in his car, listening to Robert Monroe tapes.
That was me.
That was your story, man. That was your story. And I love that on so many levels. I love it on the level of what we were talking about earlier on in the show, of that feeling of, you know, heck, if you don't feel isolated, if you don't feel like kind of an outsider to this world, then I don't know, you know, who's listening to this show, because that's how I've always felt. And that's that guy who's sitting in his car during a break saying, I got to make this shit work.
That's right. That's exactly what I was doing, man. So you do get me, for sure.
Yeah. I got to make it work. Because the rest of this, the one thing I know for sure is that the normal is bullshit. I know that. So that guy's sitting there going, it's something. There has to be something else, you know.
Yeah, now, that's because I was listening to it and I was like, this can't be real. But exactly. You know when you're around somebody that's, I mean, this guy was scientifically picking this apart. And I checked this guy's character. I looked into his background. I'm like, he's telling the truth. He's telling the truth. You know?
Right. Exactly. So you got this, you know, and isn't that the point that I just respect the hell out of that, you know, is that it's the cognitive dissonance, you know, this can't be true, but this can't be true, you know, so I'm forced to pick, you know, this can't possibly be true that I can leave my body. Now, I have to tell you, I have not left my body, and I've tried. I'm going to try again. And I was motivated by your recent show. I'm going to go do Greg Doyle's thing. Why not? You know, find the time to do it.
I'll tell you another one if you got the money for it. And there's some listeners in the chat that could, especially like Amandala in the chat, in the Fringe FM chat. I've got some good friends in there that can really attest to this. This guy has put everything together, in my opinion. Robert Bruce does a course, I think, like once a year. And he wrote a book called Astral Dynamics. And I used to be
on the show.
Such a Monroe fan, man. Such a freaking Monroe fan that I wouldn't listen to anybody else. But when I took this guy's course, and I didn't get to take all of it, he was on top of everything that I've learned as far as energetic development goes, magic, the out-of-body experience. He has put it all together in this course. And it's extensive, and it's very good.
I didn't vibe with Robert Bruce.
He's a different character, though, isn't he?
He is, and that's okay. You know, I mean, I don't have to, you know, have that deep connection with everybody, but you know, I probably wouldn't go there, because I kind of feel like you have to expose yourself, right?
Sure.
Don't you feel that way?
Yeah, I do.
I mean, you really, when you're going into these kind of realms, like the only experience I have with it is like with lucid dreaming or with, you know, mediumship work and that kind of stuff.
Well,
but
what do you mean by expose yourself, though?
Well, I'm just saying, and tell me what you feel on this, but
okay.
Pardon me there. You got to be willing to let your guard down in a way that you don't normally do. And to do that, if I'm going to connect with a teacher, and I've taken some out-of-body travel classes.
Sure.
I want it to be with someone who I feel like that, if I'm going to have to get to that level of openness, I'm totally comfortable as well as I can be with that person. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
What
yeah.
do you think about that?
Look, some people are a certain way. They carry themselves a certain way and they think, God, I hate it too, man. Like be who you are on the air as well as off the air. I don't know why I can't stand that. It does bother me when people are different. They feel like they have to carry themselves differently out in public or different than the intimate session. I'm like, just be who you are. It's almost like they're either trained that way, they really believe it, or they're ashamed of it, or maybe I'm just a complete, I'm just a complete brash person, but I just don't like, it feels dishonest, right? And so what I usually try to do with those people, and what I did have an experience with Robert was off the air after the interview. We had a long conversation, and he really did open up to me, And I think I started realizing some people are that way for a reason. But yeah, I will say that about his course. But Greg's is a good one too. I mean, if you really want to learn how to relax, and the key to this thing is relaxation. Israel Regardie that exposed the secrets of Magick and the Golden Dawn, that really revealed everything, wrote tons of books about relaxation and focus. That's what it's all about. And for most of us out here today, we can't do that. We've got all these apps like Headspace or whatever, and we can't get to that point. But we've got to learn how to get back to that point so that we can do that again. And it takes practice. It takes time and dedication. And just because you really want to do it, Alex, I believe you will. I believe you'll find a way.
Well, I think I will too. And I also feel like, just for me, I need to be detached from the outcome, because that's my deeper truth in terms of the spiritual kind of stuff that I'm on. Because I want to swing back and talk about a couple of things you said, because I want to disagree with you, man, because that's what I do, inquiry to perpetuate doubt. And whenever anyone talks about the Golden Dawn thing, it just stirs up a lot of questions for me. But I'm going to approach it from maybe a more gentle, delicate way, because I've had a bunch of interviews lately with mediums of different kinds, and they've kind of come up in different ways. And I talked to Marissa Ryan, because she is a medium that is pretty much, I guess you'd say, a mainstream medium, if you will. And she got into it because, check out her story. Her mom passes, and then her sister passes like within 2 weeks. Wow. And she's just thrown into this emotional turmoil, depression, post-traumatic stress. And the next thing you know, she's psychic. She's having a psychic experience. So the person that comes to her, or hey, am I back? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I lost you for a second, man. I was like,
sorry.
We just went into the void. I was about to play a clip about going into the void. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, buddy. I muted it because I felt like I needed to cough, and then I shouldn't have been playing with my mic.
That's fine. That's totally fine.
So Marissa Ryan, I'm telling you the story. She does this. The next thing you know, this is kind of a long story, but we got long form radio here, so we can tell it. Yeah. She gets this spirit that comes to her and says, "I need you to help me solve my murder. I was murdered." So we've heard of the psychic detective. I think the psychic detective stuff is so freaking interesting. Again, it's like, we talk about remote viewing and people remote viewing and it's a protocol and this and that. No, man, it's just being psychic. People have done this for hundreds, thousands of years, and they're all different ways. And then we got these other people who are psychic detectives. How are they anything less or more than remote viewers? It's all the same kind of stuff at some level that we don't understand. So Marissa Ryan has this experience where this person comes and says, "Hey, help me solve the murder." And she's like, "Oh man." She says no. She says no to the spirit. "I do not want to do that," and the spirit persists, and for whatever reason, I forget the exact circumstances, but she says, okay, I'll do it, and she calls the police. And if you talk to psychic detectives, you hear this over and over again. What happens when you call the police? You become a suspect in the crime,
immediately. Yeah.
You immediately become a suspect. So she has to go through all that, and she's got, kids, little kids, and it's a hassle and all the rest of that. But she finally gets through to this one detective, and he goes, okay, I get it. I don't get it. I don't know how this is happening, but I get that you're not involved with the crime, and you just laid some incredible information on me that no one else would know. Now, here's the other twist on this, and I haven't got to the main reason I talked to Marissa Ryan, but the twist is they don't solve the case. Like, that freaks people out. That freaks the skeptics out. It's like, well, she didn't solve the case. It's like, yeah, she didn't solve the case because there's a legal process in a police investigation process in our system that kind of kicks in, and even if somebody's guilty, that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to get a conviction. And the evidence of that is Marissa tells the story that the case kind of peters out. And a few years later, the detective calls her up and says, that case has always bothered me, and I know who you told us it is the person, but I couldn't do anything. Now I've retired, and on my own, I want to make sure we get this bastard, So that's kind of confirmation. But that's confirmation of so many things. That's confirmation of that there's a spirit world out there, that they are somehow engaged in this world and are interested in the activities of this world, and that's there. But the reason I talk to Marissa Ryan is because she regularly talks to E.T., right? So, but here's my question. Why aren't other mediums talking to E.T.? Why isn't the first thing out of their mouth is, oh, yeah, well, of course, I talked to 50 different species of ET, and I talked to Bigfoot.
I'll tell you why, because some of it's total BS.
But some of it's
real.
Real. And so what's up with that? What's up with Marissa Ryan? I mean, she's not faking it when she says she's talking to E.T., and she's not faking it because all these other people are saying the same thing in that extended consciousness realm. We just don't understand it, and we want to kind of say it's this or it's that, and it's all those things, and it's disinformation, and it's all the rest of that. But here's my working question right now. So you're. Let me ask you this: what do you think? What's your position on ET? What do you think?
Oh boy.
ET?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to answer that question. I'm going to give a hell of a teaser, right? I'm going to answer that question when we come back. And plus, you also said you had something to ask me or disagree with me about the Golden Dawn, right? That was on your mind. Okay,
we're going to Crowley it. We're going to go Crowley.
Okay. All right. So that's where we're going to go. I guarantee I'm going to clear some stuff up for you on that. But we're at our news break here, and we'll be right back with the one and only, thank God, this is like relief, just like last night with Quit, Alex Tsakaris from Skeptiko.
Out there. There's something out here. And so are we. KTOK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
On Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. US President Donald Trump says Turkey's invasion of Syria is a bad idea, even though he said on Sunday night that he'd given the military operation against America's Kurdish allies the green light. Former US Vice President Joe Biden has said for the first time that he believes President Trump should be impeached. And German authorities are investigating whether the killing of 2 people in the city of Halle is linked to terrorism.
This is Paranormal News. I'm Brad Bernards. Last week, bright flaming objects were spotted in the sky over the island of Chiloé in southern Chile before reportedly crashing to the ground and starting a series of small fires. After a preliminary investigation, officials from Chile's National Service of Geology and Mining say they've ruled out a disintegrating meteorite. So what are we dealing with? Technically, we're talking about unidentified flying objects. Peter Davenport of the National UFO Reporting Center tells Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis there's something to these fireball sightings.
Over the last 7 years, I have taken between 20,000 and 40,000 reports of clusters of red, orange, yellow, amber, and gold fireballs. I have no idea what they are. MUFON is investigating them actively. They're confused by them too. After the story spread through social media last week, leading Chilean astronomer and astrophysicist Jose Massa told national broadcaster TVN the object was likely either a meteorite or space debris. However, it's very rare for space debris to cause damage on the ground, as it usually falls into the ocean or remote areas. When KIC 846-2852, affectionately known as Tabby's star, arrived on the scene in 2015, it made one heck of a bang. It kept growing dimmer, erratically, in a manner that defied explanation. It still does, but it's looking like KIC 846-2852 isn't quite unique. A new sky survey has scooped up a bunch of stars that exhibit similar dimming behavior. 15 stars that seem quite similar, and a further 6 that seem even more extreme. The unusual behavior of KIC 846-2852 was first published by Louisiana State University astronomer Tabitha Boyajian and colleagues in 2015. The dimming is completely random and unpredictable, and the depth of light blocked varies. It's dipped as little as 1% and as much as 22%. These dimming periods have varying durations too, and whatever is causing this dimming, it's definitely not a planet. Click on these stories at paranormalradio.com. I'm Brad Bernards with Paranormal News.
The night is young, so turn up the heat with your host, Joe Root, on Lighting the Void on The Fringe FM.
Hey, Google. I would like to become more intelligent about the unknown world around us. But I don't have time to read or go to school because I work all the time. What do you recommend?
Try listening to Lighting the Void. It's the best way to become more intelligent about the unknown world around us. Besides, I happen to think Joe Roop is the most handsome voice in radio. Listen Monday through Friday 9 p.m. till midnight Pacific time on The Fringe FM. Plus, you will hear a bonus feature called The Stranger Than Fiction News, reported by Vance Nesbitt, news anchor and sorcerer. With all this information in one location, you are guaranteed to be more attractive to others in your social circle because you'll beam with intellectual wisdom.
Yeah, I think I'll try that.
You are listening to the Fringe FM, and I'm Michael Deacon reminding you can find my show right here on the Fringe FM every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, or by going to michaeldeacon.com. The choice is yours.
Thanks for listening to this broadcast. Need another late night fix? You can tune in every weeknight to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop on the Fringe FM.
You're listening to Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. If you would like to text, you can text in at 501-777-5631.
Alex Tsakaris is our guest tonight from the Skeptiko podcast, and if you missed last night's show, that archive will be up soon with Jason Quitt. I should have that up. I'm probably going to put both of these shows up tonight at some point. And if you missed any of these broadcasts, you can always go catch them on YouTube or any podcast player. And as long as the support keeps flowing and I can do this for free, I will remain to do it for free that way. Do have some people asking for commercial-free archives. I've been working on that for years. It feels like But other than that, yeah, you can always go catch a show for free. Just make sure if you can support us, if you can, throw it this way. And if you can't, give us a like, share, or leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you want to leave a review. All right, Alex. So before the break, you kind of disagreed with me about, what was it, Golden Dawn? And then you made a point. You said, look, if some of these people that I know that are tapping into the spiritual realm, you said, why aren't they meeting ETs? Shouldn't they all be meeting ETs? Isn't that the point you were kind of making?
Yeah, and then I guess we've got to start with what do you think of ET? Because it's surprising to me that that's a controversial question, but it is. Not everyone kind of embraces the idea of ET, non-human intelligence kind of thing.
Well, I think there's God, I hate to say this because I'm going to make some people mad, man, but I think that there's a fan club of alien, like this idea of what ET is and aliens, and these people will not budge from what their views are on ET and aliens. I feel like that they have an idea. They've got T-shirts about it, and that's their view of ET. It's kind of like the Greys, and then you talk to somebody like Preston Dennett, who just goes and talks to everybody about their experiences, and it's always some alien from a distant galaxy or planet. Now, my spiritual experience with ET, and even after talking to Whitley Strieber, reading some of Crowley's material and other people that have had contact with outer beings, I do not feel like, I'm not saying there's not life on other planets, but I just don't think that's what they are. I think there's something else entirely that has learned how to interface between the two realms, the physical and the metaphysical. That's what I think.
I don't see the evidence for that. I see the evidence overwhelmingly for more, but for all those interdimensional, shamanic, trickster, all that stuff. But when you leave ET out of the equation, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you look at the contact videos that we have of these chips and say, well, who's piloting those? And then you want to hypothesize, well, maybe it's AI or maybe it's this and that. I mean, they're telling us over and over again. I mean, people put down the Ancient Aliens show. I think Ancient Aliens show is absolutely brilliant. I would think what they've done and the case they've made is incredibly compelling. When you go talk to ancient tribes and you go talk to the Dogon and they say, there it is, Sirius, they came from there and they came down and they told us all this stuff. I had on a woman who did Artie Six Killer Clark, Dr. Artie Six Killer Clark. She's Native American, and she went to Native American people, her people, and she started collecting all the stories of the star people. And they're like, yeah, we don't normally talk about this, but yeah, the star people, they came down and they told us. I mean, it's all over the place. And that will lead us into the Crowley stuff. I think I've heard it so much from the Golden Dawn people, the Magick people, and the Crowley stuff, and that kind of turns them the other way. It's like, let's talk about Crowley separately in a minute. I don't know how you get past the overwhelming evidence for ET.
When you say ET, you mean like physical beings from another planet, right?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. That's what I mean. So it's like, you want to talk about interdimensional beings? Yes, totally on board that happens. You want to talk about spiritual beings? Yes, totally on board with that happens. But you want to talk about physical beings that come in some kind of advanced technology, nuts and bolts thing that shows up on radar and has, like I had the guy from the Tic Tac sighting that we're talking about, the recent disclosure. I had Kevin Day, who was on board the ship. He was like the, the guy who does commands all the aircraft, and he's like Top Gun guy in the Navy. And he was on my show and did a fantastic interview. The guy has serious PTSD, but it's not PTSD. So the guy, gets off the boat in San Diego after seeing these craft, and he immediately has a lot of the symptoms of PTSD. He goes to the VA and they say, you have PTSD. He goes, no, I don't. And then he reads, Jacques Vallée, who wrote a paper with Davis. I always forget who Davis. They called it the Valet-Davis effects. And what they did is studied people who had a contact experience, and they said these people show a lot of the same symptoms that you get in PTSD. So he comes across that and he goes, bingo. That's me. That's what happened to me. And then he traces it back to not just seeing the craft on his screen. Because remember, I don't know if people are even familiar with, it's been a couple of years now, but that sighting that becomes the big disclosure, Tom DeLonge thing and all that. The trigger event is, they call it the Tic Tac sighting, and it happened in San Diego, and it happened like 15 years ago. It was a long time ago, which is also interesting in terms of the PSYOP thing.
Yeah, well, let's try to agree on something first. That the To the Stars Academy is definitely a controlled narrative. To me, it's a controlled narrative, no doubt about it.
Exactly, but of real information, right?
Yeah, it's a slow drip. It's like, here's a cookie to the public. And I got into it with Stephen Bassett about this because he didn't agree with me. I said, that's all this is. They know that it's out there now, that they can't hide it anymore, so they're going to control what gets seen and how it gets seen, and they're going to do it through this. This is one of their methods.
Totally with you. And I'll take it one step further. It's a political PSYOP. And I don't want to get into politics because I think politics are kind of ridiculously false on so many levels, but there is one particular party that is controlling that narrative. And I don't mean that in any kind of way other than like, it's just true, right? So it's Podesta, and he was controlling that narrative. I don't know what the other side has. I'm not saying the other side is better or worse. I'm just saying it has one political agenda. And we don't have to think too far what that political agenda is, because it's also part of the political spectrum. And that's, we really need you need to give up your rights so that we can all get together and save the planet. Now, I'm all for saving the planet, right? Yeah. But I mean, that is one world government. That is, and this is like, it's kind of famously Werner von Braun said that, like a long
he's
time
been
ago.
right as far as his progression of things that have happened.
Exactly.
He's been right.
Exactly. Let's not forget, though, he was a Nazi, and he was a Nazi before he needed to be a Nazi. He was signing up right at the beginning for that whole deal. So, hey, everyone makes mistakes and all that, but I mean, you got to live with your past too. But right, you're right on there with me, Joe, because what he alluded to was that, hey, this is the progression, what we're going to do. And then it's going to be the evil state, and then it's going to be the terrorists, and then ultimately it's going to be the aliens.
Meteors, and then aliens, right? That's it. Now, look, pay attention right now what's happening. A slow drip of alien tech, right? A slow drip to push the masses back, to keep our mouths shut so that we believe into the stars and let them take the reins on disclosure. And now, each year, the asteroid threat has gotten bigger. Have you noticed that? Not actually the real asteroid threat, but the articles about it, the ones that are coming close to Earth, the space weapons, Space Force, etc. It's here already.
Sure, but here's the tricky part. The best controlled narrative is 90% true and 10% controlled. So, when you say all that stuff and all that stuff is true, and all that stuff is controlled and designed for social engineering, it don't mean it ain't true.
Right. I got you. I know that.
So Kevin Day and the Tic Tac sighting that they roll out as part of the political PSYOP controlled disclosure thing, that's real. Go talk to Kevin Day. He's a legit guy, 20 years in the Navy, Top Gun, top of his kind of thing. And he walks up on deck and takes the spy glasses and goes and looks at these things, these 20 craft that have been following his fleet of ships for like 4 days at 28,000 feet, moving at 90 miles an hour. Nothing can do that, by the way. Aerodynamics doesn't allow that. It just doesn't happen. And he has an experience that changes him. It changes him in a bunch of ways, but it's an experience. It's a contact experience. So who is he contacting? And then it's like, I got another buddy, Ray Hernandez from free group, they call it, but it's the Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut guy,
Right.
the first people to go out and scientifically survey people who've had contact experience. And the results of that are overwhelming in terms of these people aren't faking it. They're having contact experience with ET, and yeah, there are grays, and yeah, there are reptilians, and yeah, that seems to be a reality, and it doesn't take away for me. It doesn't take away from what you're saying. Is that there's also interdimensional, there's also fakery, there's also all sorts of other crap mixed in there too.
Second. How did that happen? Well,
right.
look, we can get past this real quick because I want to get into the spiritual stuff. Well, what I will say is that we need to take with what you're saying. I agree. Like there's stuff out there that is not explainable, right? Not by the laws of physics, but what I would challenge everybody to do before they and really look into UFO seekers and go check out their research as far as what has been out there as far as military goes. Because we have this idea in our head that the military doesn't have any type of technology that can do these types of things. And that's also been proven false. Well, they do have drones that look like Tic Tacs. They do have things that can move in ways that don't look explainable. Now, that doesn't mean that explains all of this. And the military stuff that you're talking about, the people that, like the pilots, those people that have been around this stuff, they've probably been around tech before that was advanced. And they know what they've saw. They know the experience that they've had. That does convince me, right? But I still think that we and just in my mind, that we can't look at a craft, even if it does immaculate things, and just assume that the military isn't using the tech and assume that an alien is sitting in the craft.
Yeah, but that always seems to me to kind of beg the question of where they got that technology.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially when we have people like Kid Green coming out and saying, yeah, we got that from aliens. And we have people like Corso, who wrote the book, saying, yeah, well, we got the crap from aliens. I just did an interview in this last year with that. It's one of the really standout interviews for me, and in terms of changing my thing, is with Dr. Diana Pasulka, and she wrote this book, American Cosmic.
Yeah, right.
And have you had her on?
I tried to get her on a few times. She just didn't, the late night thing didn't add up for her, so I gave up on it.
Well, I mean, that is a phenomenal piece of work, because just to fill people in case they don't know, she is out in the desert picking up pieces of craft herself, and she's a respected academic, and she's talking about this, the secret college, the people who do get the tap on the shoulder and said, okay, we're going to let you in the inner circle. Here's what's going on. And at some point, the whole thing, her book, American Cosmic, UFOs, Religion, and Technology, she tries to tie all these things that we're talking about together. And I think she does in a beautiful way, but she also raises a whole crap load of questions about how this stuff works. But to me, the UFO reality is just undeniable, as is the ET reality. And what we mentioned during a break, we were talking about Bruce Fenton, and I'm really turned on by his work because I think it kind of fills in some of these gaps. I mean, but to me, it seems.
Well, he's asking the right questions.
He is. He is, and he's asking questions about origin, and he's asking the questions that I think, to me, it stacks up that we've had ongoing contact with ET forever, for a long time.
Yeah, and how we're defining what ETs and aliens are, and how we're studying these things. Like there needs to be the conversation we had is there needs to be a department for each. I mean, you wouldn't do this scientifically. You wouldn't just have a general study in ufology. Each little thing would have its own department with its own budget and its own money and its own experts. That's what would happen. That's how you study something properly, right? But
And isn't that kind of interesting right there? Is that the fact that we don't have that, and the fact that they have us chasing our tail and running around with stupid debates is, in my opinion, has to be part of the agenda. Because you're so right. I mean, you just break it down and you say, okay, well, you just go through the major fields. Well, we're going to have to understand the psychological impact and abilities that are implied by this. We're going to have to understand the technical, and that provides the engineering, propulsion, and all the rest of that. And then we'd have to go the sociological. Well, how are these entities, related to each other, and what is the thing? And political, is there some kind of right? You'd go right down through the different disciplines, and you'd say we need to study that. Is that being done in any systematic, logical way? Heck no, because to do that, we might actually make some progress about understanding it more in a more comprehensive way. And you don't want that. I mean, if you're into control, you don't want people really understanding stuff. You want them just kind of right. Scared and confused and arguing and everything we see.
Yeah. Yeah, and I played a clip about that last week from that movie Phenomena that I thought was interesting when John Travolta had that experience and he saw that light and ship and it changed him consciously, right? And he had all these gifts and powers. And instead, he was trying to teach people about what they could do consciously, how they could tap into their own energy. And I kind of related to that. I felt like, man, I know his frustration. And yet everybody crowded around him asking about the light and the UFO and the alien, and it was a very fearful type of energy, like something we don't, and that's how UFO celebrities are made. Then it just becomes a wash of disinfo mixed in with good info, and then there's marketing involved, and it's like, okay, there's got to be some truth in here somewhere. And then when you look at people that have been doing this for years, I mean. Klaas Vaughn, the guy that he's been running a archive since the 70s about ufology. He said this has happened 3 times already, that this is a cycle. We're no close to disclosure than we were before. He's seen the cycle happen 3 times. So right. When you say that we feel like we're getting close, but that we're just being controlled and we have no idea how powerful this stuff that these people are and what they're hiding from us. I totally agree with you. I'm starting to see that. Like, it's going to take more than what we think to get down to the truth of this.
Yeah. Crowley.
But,
Crowley. We got to go Crowley. You tell me when.
But, let me see if I can get us back. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there, guys. I'm sorry, but something's knocking us offline. So I guess we need to stop talking about aliens and disclosure. So tell me what you want to talk to me about Crowley. Go for it.
Well, I want to make sure I understand where you're coming from. But the thing that kind of troubles me about the magic community, and I think, I've heard a little bit about your kind of philosophical position about magic, and I think it's so awesome. I mean, about empowerment and about moving away from fear and about self-development and all that stuff, I think is so, so positive and so, so awesome. I think at the same time, we got to be upfront and got to be legit and got to try and understand how some of this stuff fits together, because it's not all, love and light, right? I mean, there's some darkness out there too.
Absolutely.
And kind of one of my things, especially my missions lately, is trying to understand how that fits in. And I had this kind of epiphany moment that was provided to me by one of my guests recently, Claire Broad, who is a medium in the UK and just really brilliant, really liked her a lot. But, two things clicked for me is that, if we understand, Joe, you are a spirit being, and that's more than just trite, that's just true. It's like, if you have any understanding of consciousness and extended consciousness, and consciousness survives death, well, then you're this massive spiritual being that is, kind of here in this body, whatever you take that to. And I don't want to sound new age-ish, but if we wanted to have a scientific discussion about that, we'd get to the same point. Near-death experience science suggests that consciousness survives bodily death. Well, then there was that consciousness before, and that was that consciousness after. And then if we have spirit communication, it's spirit. So you get what I'm saying? I mean, you were a spirit, now you're in this body, and you will become a spirit again. So this spirit thing maybe isn't such a different thing than the way we are. So when we talk about, magic and trying to marshal the forces of these spirits, I get a little bit sideways on that. What I relate to what you're saying is that, well, you're a spiritual being. Your full spiritual potential is always there, and that's what you need to develop.
Right.
And then I connect that with this other just kind of basic thing is as below, so above. People say as above, so below. But the reverse is true too. I mean, if you want to find creepy people that do evil stuff, you can find them in Arkansas. You can find them in Southern California. You can find them every place where people are listening to this show. There's no mystery to that. So let's judge people by what they are and who they and who they associate with and what they do. Crowley lived a pretty miserable, despicable life by every account. Every biographer will tell you that. And when I hear people say, yeah, well, but he wrote some interesting stuff and you don't really know him because you didn't read this or didn't read that. No, I read his freaking biography. I read that he abandoned his kids. I read that he abused his wife and drove her crazy and that he was the worst friend in the world and he turned on him.
Yeah, he wasn't a good dude, man.
So then he's not a good dude. So then he's not a good spirit. I don't give a crap what brilliance he wrote from some kind of channeled kind of, it's not that I don't care about that, but that to me has to take a backseat to how he, was able to bring that through and how he was able to figure out this thing we call, life. And he didn't do a good job. So no, I'm not a fan.
Right. Well, the problem is Crowley altogether, because the second someone thinks about Magick or the Golden Dawn, it is the first image that pops up in people's mind. And the reason why is because Crowley was one of the first people to break his oath to that Rosicrucian order, to expose the information, which later Israel Regardie had to come back and fix, right? See, Crowley had an ego thing. He wanted to take his idea of Thelema and push it across as many places as he could. A new religion, a new aeon, which, by the way, is very interesting that he met an alien called the Lamb and drew the alien on paper and channeled this person named Aiwass and said, look, there's a new religion that's coming. We're going to call it Thelema, and it's all about do what thou wilt, and that's what we're going to do. So he wanted to get recognized in Masonry. He did everything he could to get legitimized in Masonry, and he kind of did and kind of didn't, but that's a long story. Everything he could to make his own system, which is called the AA, which was based on what he was taught in the Golden Dawn, but to the actual original Rosicrucian order and the original magical teachings of spiritual ascension and high magic, he was a traitor. Fact. He was a traitor to them. He broke his oath. He exposed the stuff. And not to mention, he took sex magic to a different level, which was supposed to be one of the most sacred things in the world, the realization that male and female energy did create in every single way. And so they wanted to go do this with, let's try it with as many concubines as possible. Let's take love out of the equation. And, well, that's how you define love. And they get into semantics. But deep down, we all know that there's a power in that when you love somebody, that there's something sacred to that. That's why a lot of people are messed up sexually, pervertedly. That's why the world's messed up, if you really want me to get on a rant, is because very sacred things about spirituality and humanity have been treated as if they're just medicines. Now, I don't mean like Baptist church going between, man and a woman, and it has to be that way. I'm just talking about the energies and love and how sacred it was supposed to be. That's it. And so Crowley messed up a lot of things for a lot of magicians. In fact, when I try to talk about magic and someone brings up Aleister Crowley, it feels like somebody's stabbing me in my side, because now his image has plagued the entire community of ceremonial magic. I'm not saying that he didn't teach some good things, but his character is suspect, just like you're saying. And anybody that makes an oath like that, in my mind, and breaks it, doesn't have integrity to begin with. And he was on an ego trip. Now, do I believe you should throw the baby out with the bathwater? No. But there are a lot of books that he got credit for that he didn't write, like Liber 777. Everybody thinks Aleister Crowley wrote that. No, he did not. Samuel Mathers did. Crowley just redid it. He did that with quite a few books. He wasn't ready to move on past where he had been initiated to. And anytime you have these orders like this, like these orders where there's politics involved, and you get a guy like Crowley in there who's just the black sheep, he's going to mess things up. He's going to question everything. He's not there for the greater of humanity. He's not there like he says he is. He's there to push his own ideas, create his own religion. And in fact, it's kind of ironic that he's such against dogma, and yet he still created his own religion. So
well, let me ask you this. This is kind of the ultimate question. Do you believe in the moral imperative, if you will? Do you believe that there's good and bad? Do you believe that there's... No, I'll just leave it at that. Do you believe that there's good and bad?
Yes.
So you believe, because this is like what I take from like the near-death experience research. So if people come to Skeptiko and they listen to shows, I've done 50 freaking shows on near-death experience. Talk to every near-death experience researcher out there, trying to understand, is the science solid? Can we really rely on the fact that people are having this experience? And there's no question that they are, scientifically. The evidence that comes back from me that is undeniable is that there is some kind of hierarchy to this consciousness that gets up to the point of being, do the right thing. There is a right thing, and you can choose to do that right thing, or you can choose not to do the right thing. But what shines through is the light, You can transcend the darkness, and there's a light, and you can go to it. I'm not trying to get religious, because I'm not at all a religious person, and I'm pretty much anti-religion, as people who listen to the show find. But I do believe that there is, there is a light, there is a moral imperative, there is a right and a wrong. It's not all just this blob of consciousness. So in that, I think that factors into this whole thing too, is that
people think magicians are Crowley now. They think when I say I'm a practicing ceremonial magician, the first thing that enters most people's mind is I'm doing what Aleister Crowley is doing. And I'm trying to be like Aleister Crowley, or I'm a Crowley fan. That's the first thing that enters people's mind. And it's not that way at all for a lot of magicians.
Oh, I totally get that. And I'm not trying to pin that on you at all. What I'm just the part that kind of intrigues me and interests me from an intellectual standpoint is if there is this like you were talking about love, if there is this good, if there is this light, then it really kind of simplifies the whole thing. Yep. Right? It all breaks down to is, hey, Crowley was all those things, he was a human being, and he had some urges and some drives, and he had some stuff that we can all relate to and understand. But that's not the goal. The goal is to transmute that, to transcend that, to go to and be this being that is better than that. And that's the only complaint I have with the magic community, when they're not clear on that, when they're not clear that there is a path towards spirituality there is a good, there is a light. It isn't all gray. It isn't all do what thou wilt. There is no you to be doing the you. You know what I mean? To be doing what you want to do. It's like, it's to transcend that to something greater. If that's the reality, then everything else makes sense. It makes sense that I'm not perfect and that I don't do it right and that I will continue to mess up. But at least I know where I'm pointed. I know where I'm headed.
Well, magic isn't the only way either. It's just a system designed for the Western type of people, the people that can't sit and meditate for 6 hours to get to enlightenment. It was designed for forceful alchemy, right? So high magic wasn't even designed originally to manifest things. That's just like a side effect, Right. It was designed for you to round out your nature. That's why you go through the elements first, so you can learn to master your emotions and your intellect and your desire and your physical nature. You learn to master that, and then you start invoking planetary forces. So you learn how these planetary forces work. This stuff goes all the way back to Egypt, the 7 ancient planets, and what they do, and all of how they manifest from above to below here on the earth in symbol form and in real form. And you learn all about that. And then you get into the constellations, and then you get into the Sephira, and eventually you get up to this place on the Tree of Life known as Doth, which is the abyss, right? And you've heard people talk about crossing the abyss, and that's where you make a choice. You make a choice to ascend into, like stellar, how you hear people call like solar body, diamond body, stellar body. Well, that's what that is. You make a decision to move on past being stuck on planets and physical reality and go experience something else, or you choose to stay behind and help this planet along, right? But either choice, you got to be pure of heart to get there. That's why there's not a whole lot of Magister Templies walking around. And the ones that are, you'll never know who they are anyways, because most of them are trying to do what's good for the planet, actually.
Well, I was going to say I don't have any problem with that, but it goes way beyond not having any problem with that. I totally think that there's a reality to that is undeniable in the sense that it lines up with every other mystical tradition I've ever heard about, from the East or the West. It's just a different, like you were saying, it's a different way of putting it for a different mindset, for a different culture, if you will. But at the same time, and I want to get your opinion on this, I want to ask you this question. So I'm interviewing another medium the other day, and really liked this woman, respect this woman, and had an interesting background. She was super successful as a financial analyst on Wall Street, working at a big firm. She undoubtedly made millions. There's no question, because she was on CNBC and all that stuff. And again, I respect people who have figured out how to play that game and played it well. There's a certain knowing that they have that needs to be respected. She, at some point, very late after this career, develops this mediumistic capability that's just undeniable. She's really good. And she's turned it for good in the sense that she's a death doula, So she goes to hospice where people are dying, and she just is there, because sometimes these people don't have family around, and the dying process can be really, really strange. And hospice understands this. Like, hospice is mainstream, and hospice understands that there's something kind of spiritual going on when people die, so it's kind of good to have somebody there. And she kind of slips under the radar and says, yeah, I'll be there. And by the way, I'm mediumistic, so I can see when the spirits are coming in to guide this person to the next level and all that stuff. Crazy stuff. But here's the point. Here's what I want to ask you, Joe. So we're talking, and I ask her about reincarnation. And she goes, well, reincarnation is a religious thing. I don't believe in reincarnation. I go, you don't believe in reincarnation? She goes, yeah, the spiritualist church group that a lot of these mediums come from, it's part of their dogma that there's really no such thing as reincarnation. Well, I'm like, well, but what do you mean? I mean, this is again, scientifically, reincarnation is pretty well established. We've all heard the stories, and
right.
Ian Stevenson at University of Virginia and Jim Tucker at University of Virginia, and they publish these peer-reviewed papers. And we have all these other traditions like the Dalai Lama and all these people say, yeah, not only do you reincarnate, we can direct our reincarnation. How can this group over here be blind to, it's like I was talking about Marissa Ryan, and she sees ET in the other realm, along with seeing these dead people that can be verified. She sees ET. How come other people don't see ET and talk about it? How can this group over here say, oh, yeah, no, reincarnation? I mean, they're closed down to that. And the way I think that relates back is, so here you talk about ceremonial Renaissance magic. Yes. I have no doubt what you're saying is true, but my experience would tell me they're just looking at, one part of it. And that doesn't mean that it's not true. It just means it's just one way of looking at it.
Well,
what do you think?
Well, it is just one way of looking at it, right? It's so Mark Passio talks about this, and it's really intelligent how he talks about it. If you look at, let's take as above, so below, right? If you look at the earth, okay, and relate it to the human brain, let's just do that for a second. The right side of the brain is what controls the art and all of the artsy stuff and the woo-woo, if you want to call it that. And the left brain is logical, okay? Now, if you look at the earth as far as religious goes and as far as how humans are trying to ascend spiritually, one hemisphere does things a certain way, which is kind of woo-woo, right? Like Eastern, meditate, just give into it, surrender, and that's what they do. The Western style is more of a ceremonial type thing that involves what Carl Jung talks about, like symbols and stuff, where you play to the subconscious, and the subconscious is the doorway to the spiritual realm. But both, right, get you there. Now, the thing is what I find is dead smack in the middle, if you look at this, is Israel, right? And Judaism. In Judaism, it's kind of funny how this goes back to the ancient Canaanites, and it goes back even further. But the Jews, right? I believe that religion was taught something very special called the Kabbalah. And a lot of people don't, when they look into that, they think, oh, well, Madonna was a Kabbalist and all this other stuff. No, these rabbis used different methods, and they went outside their religion, by the way, and meditated and would go on these different planes, and they would write everything down until they could actually agree, and they mapped out levels of consciousness, and they glyphed it on a tree of life, and they said, okay, we're going to call this path, and we're going to call this sphere. And ever since then, when people do things like scrying, or even when they do astral projection, or when they're dreaming, if they know, the crazy thing about this is that if they know all the correspondences on that tree, they can tell you exactly where they were. I was in this sphere based on these symbols and these colors and this feeling. I was in this other sphere. And it's not just jumbled up. It's dead on. So how are they mapping that out? And then you take a guy like Daskalos, who was just a mystic, right? Just a plain old mystic who some say taught the Theosophical Society, who healed people with energy and energy balls, and was all about meditation and prayer, and that's it. But still had a glyph of that tree that he said was the real glyph that came from ancient Egypt. And then when you line up all of the religious and caste systems, you could put every god system you want to and what they stand for, it all lines perfectly up to that tree. And then that tree also lines up perfectly to the chakra system, to the human body, to every plant, to everything. And so when Masons go into their first ceremonies in the Blue Lodge, and they're doing all these different guards and holding themselves this way or that way, what they don't know, and what Albert Pike tried to tell them in Morals and Dogma, is that they're giving symbols of that tree, right? They're pointing to certain Sephiroth and stuff. And this was the biggest hidden secret was, hey, we found a map that it's almost like a pirate. Let's call them pirates of consciousness, where they were trying to traverse the systems of consciousness. And that map, that glyph, is what was closest to the real thing. It's what everybody agreed upon, right? It doesn't mean it's actually the whole truth, but it's what we agree upon. So when we're in the dream world, anybody in the Western systems know that they're in the sphere of Yesod, or the lunar realms, the realms that control water and psychism and the psychic world. And anybody that's ever done lunar magic knows how real it is and how powerful it is, and that it is the trigger and the doorway to this physical realm and back out. And it also relates to the subconscious. So I think when it comes to systems, it just depends on what you want to do. Like, there's people that like to meditate, man. They just like to just open themselves up to whatever and meditate and see what happens, and they can get there that way. I'm a little bit more of a control freak. I want to know what's happening with my energy. I want to know what I'm letting in and letting out. And you can do it that way with the Western system.
See, you know so damn much. I wish you'd put people on the grill more. Sometimes I feel like you kind of roll over and are holding back, kind of playing this.
Funny.
Come on, you do kind of play up that, oh, heck, I'm just this guy from Arkansas, I don't know crap kind of thing,
That's funny. I've had listeners get on to me for that because they're like, man, you're holding back. Quit doing that stuff.
That's right. That's right. I agree with that. Because that's.
I feel like if I don't hold back, then I would have never gotten your question.
But the flip side is also true, right? Like, you just laid some stuff on me there that, I'm going to have to think about, but has kind of changed the way that I'm going to have to research that. I'm going to have to verify some of the stuff you're saying, but it's changed the way I think about something that I've thought about for a long time. I wouldn't want to miss that, Yeah, so
but then you got a guy like Crowley that comes around and enters the Golden Dawn, right? Starts learning all these deep secrets and stuff, and just goes willy-nilly about what he wants, exposes the information on a mass level, right? And now has pretty much tainted the, and I'm not saying all the way, because I know you get that, but a lot of people don't. I mean, even people that I've talked to for the first time about magic, they bring up Crowley, and it's like, Jesus, man. Nobody knows who Israel Regardie is, who he worked with Crowley, had to go back and fix pretty much everything Crowley was saying to put the original Golden Dawn teachings out. And that's where I got that persistence quote from, because I believe persistence is the key to spirituality and everything that you want to manifest in life. I really believe that. And I'll say this real quick, and then I'll let you speak on this. And this is my favorite author and magician. And he said, nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talents will not, or talent won't, because nothing's more common than unsuccessful men or women with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. So if you have that, right, it doesn't matter your wits, it doesn't matter what. If you're persistent enough, I believe that you can do great things spiritually and physically.
Right on. No, I totally agree with that. And a lot of these things, as you've expressed on your show and as you've kind of guided people, they're like kind of building blocks. So sometimes when somebody jumps to the top of the wall or it's some in the middle of the wall, it's like, well, really, you'd have to go back and look at those 4 or 5 blocks that were built to get you there, because I do have somewhat of a more Eastern approach. I think I lean that way, or I'm programmed that way, but I've always kind of maintained this idea, and see if this can relate to what you're saying, is that you got to be somebody before you can be nobody. So the idea of just sitting there meditating and just being nothing, I don't know that works. I think that's works better for people that have done the persistence, back when I was, had my business
for some people. That
well,
does.
I was going to say when I was, in the business world, and I was trying to be an entrepreneur, trying to make money, I was all about manifesting. I was reading everything I could about manifesting in the kind of normal way, like business books, self-help books, Tony Robbins, and just
Think and Grow Rich.
Think and Grow Rich, and Covey, and Stephen Covey, and all that. I was desperate. I was like, I will take in as much as I can because these people have walked this path, and I will learn how to walk that path. So, now once you get to some point, and then you go, okay, now, so if you move that to that Eastern kind of meditative kind of thing, but you're had that experience, that's already in there, right? So, and I think that's what you're saying too, in a way that, you're not saying it directly, but that's how I interpret that, is that Joe has this certain disposition and, sensibility that his dad gave him and his personal experiences gave him. And he's with the persistence thing. And then he's building on that to take it to the magic realm. That is incorporating into who he already is, and people don't see that. It's the iceberg thing. They see the tip, and they go, oh, he's a magician, he's Crowley, but they don't see everything that went into bringing you to that point.
Well, also what they don't see is the system of the Golden Dawn. That system is all about that the elemental thing I was telling you about, right? And you look at the tarot card, and it's got the pentacle, and it's got the wand, it's got the cup. That pentacle is representing the magician when he's mastered those things. That's why he's holding one hand above and one hand below. And there's an eternity symbol up there because he now understands that these principles are in the universe and manifesting in finite form, almost in a fractal way, and that he can change things about his reality based on knowing that, right? So he can work both ways. He can invoke large forces, or he can change little things in his life to change big things in his life, right? Just like as within, so without. If your brain's all messed up, most people go to therapy because they're scatterbrained, right? But if you just clean your house, and I mean really clean it, just really clean your area and your environment, watch what happens to your brain. Well, isn't that something? Well, see, you can see how that works. And people like Jason Louv will say, well, that's it's all in the brain. It's all psychology. Really? I mean, there's some sigil magic tricks that I've seen that just cannot be psychology. It almost seems like, hey, we're learning how to talk to consciousness now in a bigger way, right? But what I would say is that this system is designed to teach you these things so that you don't have to use them anymore. Once you become an adept, you don't need the tools anymore. You don't even need to draw circles or anything. You can actually close your eyes and take off.
That is such a great point. I've never heard that before. But to me, that immediately clicks in that, and it connects with some of the other, spiritual traditions, wisdom traditions I've heard. Of course, it's a way to transcend needing any of that, because ultimately, if there is that hierarchy, then that hierarchy doesn't need any of that stuff. It's just a vehicle to get there.
But if you ever fall short, or if you ever lose your way, because you went down, that's another reason why I like ceremonial magic. If you ever lose your way or lose who you are, because that can happen, trust me, when you're traversing consciousness, you can go back to your table with your tools on it and claim your power back if you need to. So you remember where you came from,
nice,
and who you are. It's the manifesting, like all the stuff in your life, that's a side effect to high magic. But I'm not saying that it's not important, because we're taught to carry guilt with wanting things. Well, I want success, I want money, I want love, I want physical fitness, and we're taught programs that you got to work your ass off to get these things, right? And that program is deeply embedded in us. Well, maybe not work your ass off, because I've seen people become video game stars overnight and become millionaires. So your idea of work and mine are two different things. It's really the persistence, I think, that gets people. The will. And Crowley understood the will, but he took it to a whole nother level. Like, the will is everything. It's even above love. And you'll see that once you do your divine will, then you're going to meet your ultimate love. I don't know about that, because you guys are just having orgies and calling it ultimate love without repercussion, without thought of the children that are to come, without thought of disease, without thought of cause and effect. You're at a swingers party and you're taking something very sacred, which is the act of love between two people, and turning it into a swingers party.
Well, I think you said something, that would take us in a whole other, we'd have another 3 hours there, but I think what you said was really profound. about, like, you were almost apologizing for saying that sex is this sacred, ultra super spiritual kind of thing.
I don't, but I don't feel like I should apologize for it. I think we've been taught all wrong about it. That's what I think.
Oh yeah, totally. And I don't think we should feel, and you just threw another word in there, guilt, right? So, but we don't want to pile on a bunch of guilt about that either,
exactly.
because that doesn't work either. But just to recognize what it is, and I hate discernment. I hate when people say discernment, but geez, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about discernment, but we're also talking about like with Crowley. I get what you're saying, but. And he's one of these figures that is a lightning rod figure that maybe is good in a way because it kind of brings to a head some of these things. But I think you have to have discernment, like you're saying, and you got to be able to see through the BS, of which what you just said, I think is really hard for a lot of people to see. Hey, do what thou wilt does not work. It works on one level when you're really kind of don't have any confidence in yourself and you don't have any kind of sense of right. You get what I'm saying? What you talk about in Magick, if you don't any kind of sense of being able to empower yourself to manifest things, it's like, yeah, get past that with do what thou wilt, but realize that as soon as you get there, then you want to give that up because you don't want to hurt people and you do want to get into this stream of light, in this stream of love, and you want to figure out that's the next step. So he's talking about a very low level thing, but if you don't have that discernment, then you just think that's the end.
Yeah. And what did he open up to? And before I'll say that, what did Crowley open up by what he did? I will say that, that's important. Discernment's important. Like, that act should be an important thing. But, a lot of people, they get in, desperate situations, and I've gotten those emails like, you say Magick has changed your life, Joe. Well, tell me how to do it because I'm at rock bottom right now. Well, look, I'm in a shack doing the show. I sacrificed a very comfortable home, and I didn't you still have to play with the laws of the universe. They still apply. You just have to play the game differently. That's all. You have to be the one that decides what's right and what's wrong about who you are. Not what society says, not what your freaking parents say, not what your peers say. Ultimately, it comes down to your choice. And deep down, everybody wants what's best for them. And they want what's best for other people. Most people do. So we don't need laws, religions, dogmas, and parents to tell us what's right and wrong. This is the biggest problem with folks. You got anxiety, you've got depression, you've got mass quantities of opiate addiction, sex mania, where they're justifying orgies because they call it love, right? It's not love, right? The astral travelers that are really doing astral travel have seen the parasites, and I don't want to scare y'all, but they've seen the parasites firsthand that vamp your energy every time you have an orgasm that doesn't have anything to do with love. They suck it right out of you, right from the top of your head and off the planet. And it sounds crazy, but we've also seen these things on the sun, like little clear, they look like clear ships almost, or beings that just roll up to the sun, take a little energy and move on. So we don't really know what's going on out there. So we got to be careful. So a lot of times when I talk about Magick, people just want to jump in and dabble with things that they shouldn't be jumping in and dabbling with. You got to do it from an understanding that you still only know small amounts of the whole reality. You got to tread lightly if you're going to do this stuff.
I think there's also some wisdom in what you're talking about in terms of how these different forms are designed to fit different people. And if they fit you, then that's great. And if they don't fit you, you don't have to judge and say, well, then that's invalid. It just maybe isn't the right fit for you. What do you think about that?
I think that's totally true, because I used to have this mindset that everybody needed to go through the initiatic. If they're going to do things as far as initiation goes, that they need to do it the way I was doing it, right? That they need to work on one thing and then work on the next thing. Right. No, that's just for me. That's I believe that. I believe that you shouldn't mess with guns until you know how to play with knives, right? Until you can do that responsibly. And then you move on to something else. Where others believe, like chaos magicians, they know it's dangerous, but they don't care. They're willing to take the dangers. They'll blow their houses up. They'll do whatever to try to figure out what works and what don't. But they're not necessarily doing it for ascension purposes, right? Just like Dr. Stephen Skinner, who we had on the other day, he admits it. I'm not doing magic for spiritual ascension. He does feng shui for that, right? He does magic and purposefully invokes spirits, beings, demons, stuff like that. Deals with them to get what he wants, to get what he needs out of life, and he carries no shame with it. But he also talks about how tremendously dangerous it is, that if you don't know what you're doing, then you don't need to mess with it. And I think he's right. So it's all in the eye of the beholder there, I think.
Wow. Awesome.
It's scary stuff, though, man. I get more emails about people that are afraid of psychic attacks and stuff, and then I start wishing, like, man, I wish I didn't even talk about this, But if you believe in prayer, there's got to be something you believe in that is attached to your heart. And if that's prayer, then use it. It'll protect you. Because all I know is what you believe is what becomes real in your life. That's what I do know.
Persistence. And, we started out talking about truth seeking, and I think there's a persistence that goes with that too, to always be on that edge of, like, the edge of the void, like you're talking about, always being questioning, always having that pure heart of seeking the truth. To me, that's the ultimate place, I think, to be, because it just resonates with every different tradition that I come across. So I don't know. What do you think about
astrology,
that?
Right, Alex? I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, here's what I think about astrology. I did a show. Do we have a few minutes so I can tell this quick story? Minutes. So I had this, I like asking people who listen to the show to recommend guests. And you get this all the time. People recommend guests. When people recommend guests to me, I say, great, you go help me book them. You go contact, you go help, get them involved. Right, and because one thing that does is 90% of them then just go away and shut up. But some people have gone to great lengths and have done fantastic work in helping me direct where the show should go. And that happened in this case with astrology. This guy comes down and goes, hey, Alex, you seem to be interested in the science angle of this. You've had on Dr. Julie Beischel, who is this woman from the Windbridge Institute, and you haven't talked to her. You should. She's done this incredibly controlled scientific work with mediums, like quadruple blind, takes out any question of whether there's cold reading and any of that. And she proves scientifically, she has a PhD in pharmacology. She knows how to run an experiment. Sure. And she's proven that mediumship is real. And he says, hey, Alex, there's this woman who has done the same thing in astrology. She's proven it scientifically. And she got her paper published in the Journal for Scientific Exploration, really? JSC, which, like, a lot of people don't know, but people are on the inside. I've had people talk to me and said, look, I've published papers in all these mainstream journals. This is the hardest journal I've ever had to get into because it is kind of an edgy science journal, and they're really tight about it. So as soon as I knew that Renee had this published in JSC, I was like, okay, we're going to get her on. So if I can, here's her research. She said, I'm an astrologer. I do Vedic astrology. And in Vedic astrology, my teacher has told me there's this particular alignment of the planets. And if you see that alignment in someone's chart, that suggests that that person will have a lot of followers. Ah. So she said, oh, interesting. What is the modern understanding of followers? Well, it's Twitter. So she did this really deep dive statistical kind of thing over my head, and just all this complicated way that she did it, but it's solid stuff. She took the top 1,000 Twitterers, most followers.
Right.
And then she filtered that out to people who have a public astrology chart. She controlled that with another group that, trust me, she did the proper controls. And she gets this statistical analysis, and it's overwhelmingly statistically significant that people that had that particular astral connection in their chart had more followers, like dramatically more followers. And that was the first. So that's kind of what turns me on Skeptiko, is I like when the science lines up with something that is way beyond science, right? So astrology is, that's way outside of science. But here's someone who's used the scientific method and scientific tools to prove astrology in a way that it changed my view of astrology forever.
Yeah, man. The thing that I've learned about astrology, the last person that read their chart for, you still with me, Alex? I hope I didn't lose you there. Okay, so and this was just basic natal astrology. This is how bad things are. You can pull up a decent software and read the reports of someone's natal chart, all the planets and everything. And this person started crying because I was like, what's the matter? Well, they said, I feel exposed. Like, this is the stuff that I hide. And yet, when we pick up the paper or we listen to astrology, we always hear about our sun signs. And that's just one part of us. But astrology was like big time based on the 7 ancient planets, where they were when you were born, just the natal astrology. And then you get into the sidereal or Eastern astrology, like you're talking about Vedic astrology, and all that stuff lines up too. So certain energies line up when you were born. They just were. And if people doubt that, then they need to look at how the moon affects the earth. Of course, that Venus makes a perfect pentagram, in the sky, right? Like, why would it do that? And you can't prove it scientifically, but I guess you can based on what you're telling me. If you do enough experiments and you do them the right way, then you definitely can. This is another spiritual thing that you just have to know through experience and trial and error. But John Anthony West wrote a book about that too, called A Case for Astrology, where he presented astrology as if he was in a courtroom. And it undeniably would have been found that it was true, if it was presented in a courtroom.
Well, you said something a while back that I think connects with this, and that's that, if we really looked at it in a systematic way, using all the methods of science that are well established and have generated so many cool things for us, we could get a lot further. There's a lot that could happen in this intersection between science and spirituality, and the fact that it isn't happening, I don't think is accidental. I don't think they want this kind of you look. If your interest was controlling the herd, you want all this stuff going. You just want to keep them in one narrow pen with the blinders on, and you want them to be scared, and you want them to be lonely and depressed. That'd be the easiest way to control the herd. So you don't want Renee Alsop doing, astrology, proving that astrology is statistically significant. You don't want any of the rest of that stuff.
But the cool thing is, though, is how did all this stuff survive? Mainly P. Hall brought that up. He's like, it's truly remarkable how the ancient occult science or the hidden science of things survived from the beginning of time. How did it survive? Well, it survived in the stories that we call religion, right? It survived in the tales and books and myths, so that when somebody started really using their brain and decoding things, that they would see, wait a minute, there is astrology in the Bible. This guy's talking about the lion, the ox, the eagle, and the man. This is the riddle of the Sphinx and the 4 corners of the zodiac, plus the 4 elements. Why is this in Revelation? Or why is it in this ancient book or text? So somebody put this stuff in our religions, and no matter what religion it was, through God systems, caste systems, you name it, so that eventually we would get smart enough to see the mythology and then realize, hey, there's something to it. There's something underneath this. And it's pretty fascinating how it's still here. It's 2019. It's still here.
That's a great point.
But how are we going to do that scientifically? That's where you come in, man. You're the science guy.
Well, I mean, I think we're all, in the culture that we live in and in the time that we live, we're all science guys. So, you know, none of us can really stand the guy who's completely outside of science, because you just look right. You're right. There's just too much. You know, it's like all somebody needs to do is wave their iPhone in front of you and go, "Okay, what are you saying now?" It's all bullshit. I got an iPhone. You know what I mean? Yeah. So we do have to bridge those two worlds,
sure,
in a way. Otherwise, we look ridiculous. You know, you want to go and talk about spiritual stuff. We are so enmeshed in just technologically magic world that people can't get to the spiritually magic world because they're overwhelmed by the technology magic world. And that's understandable. Yeah. It is magic.
If you get to time too, Alex, hit me up and pull up a chart of technology, the progression of technology, right? Like if you had to look, there are charts, I've seen it, that shows the progress of technology. And the funny thing is when, I'll just kind of end it on this just to leave a little mystery here. The funny thing is that when Crowley invoked all these beings, that chart turned 90 degrees upwards, and it perfectly aligns with the time that he did that, when he invoked this new aeon to come. Think about that with all the ETs, ships, and all the stuff we're seeing, right? There's something there to it, I think.
Fascinating, man.
He opened a portal, man.
What an awesome conversation. This is just an awesome conversation. I don't stay up late, but I'd stay up late for this conversation anytime. You are awesome to talk to.
Well, you did. You made it the long haul. You are like an official void walker now, man. You've made it the long haul. You're wearing the shoes. But yeah, now that we got a couple of minutes, please tell my audience, if anybody that doesn't know, how they can listen to your show and where they can follow you on, so they do know.
Well, I'm going to start using how do you say it? All K's, double K? What do you say?
Yeah,
only K?
Skeptiko with only K's, yeah.
Skeptiko with only K's. That's it. You know, they're all out there. They're pretty Googleable, and, you know, you just check me out, and I'd go back to what we were saying earlier. If you're at this point and something has resonated, then come on by and just pick and choose. There's no firewall. There's no ads. There's nothing to sell. I never try and sell the book. A book publisher, an Anomalous Press, they're nice, but they don't like that I never sell the book. It's just all out there, you know, and I'm happy to be able to provide it to anyone who stumbles across it and finds a use for it.
Thank you for coming on the show and sticking it out with us, man. I knew it would be this good if you did. So I really appreciate it. I really do appreciate your time, Alex. Thank you.
Joe, it's been absolutely fantastic. I learned so much. I feel grateful.
I did too, man. And that's why we do it. And we got to get out of here too. Don't forget the show's produced by the Fringe FM. Please don't copy it on YouTube without written permission. Music was by Chronox, guitar by Bundy. We'll be back tomorrow night, same time, same channel. I want to give a shout out to Don, Pacho, Eric Markham, Jeremy Scott, all of you guys in the Fringe FM chat. I love you. Please donate if you can. We can sure use it. We'll see you guys tomorrow night. Good night.
On this program do not necessarily reflect those of the Fringe FM, KTLK Digital Broadcasting, its sponsors, affiliates, or staff. Listener discretion is advised.